I only went to the supermarket to buy a battery. But meanwhile, my precious, silent daughter, she decided to drive the mech I was building straight into the center of the city. She caused a massive scene, and then the machine finally ran out of power on the road. It went tumbling down into a mountain ditch. Seeing that the mech wouldn't move anymore, my sweet daughter just curled up and fell asleep in the cockpit. She had no idea the world outside was in a total frenzy as the night passed. Commander Sinzantin of the Longwa military region and Professor Zheng Hongru tried every blasting method the Institute had to offer, but they couldn't leave a single scratch on that mech. They simply couldn't force the cockpit open. Desperate, their only choice was to hunt down the mech's creator. That's when Commander Sun issued a lethal priority order. The command was transmitted immediately to the police as if they were hunting a murderer. The duty officers rushed out into the city of Bogota. They moved instantly and found me in the middle of the road while I was searching for my daughter. I immediately asked the officer if he had seen an 18-meter-tall mech. The officer's expression shifted the second he heard those words. He tentatively asked if I was the one who built the machine. I realized right then that the police were already all over the city. They had to be fully aware of the situation. I pressed the officer, asking if they had received a report of anyone seeing the SMK, and I begged him not to waste time and just take me there. Without waiting for an answer, I added that the SMK's life support only lasts 6 hours. Counting from last night, it was at its limit, and I needed to get there now. Hearing that, the police didn't dare hesitate and told me to get in. We jumped into the patrol car and raced through the streets. I watched as the car veered further and further away from the city center. I couldn't believe that naughty girl had driven so far out. Then I saw it. The massive mech slumped against the collapsed mountainside. My blood ran cold just looking at it. This was a massive order for a major client, due for delivery today. The moment the car screeched to a halt, I threw the door open and sprinted toward the mech. But I was stopped dead in my tracks by Special Forces units. They were armed to the teeth. Stand back. This is a restricted military zone. Officer Linsington panicked and chased after me, screaming, "Don't shoot. He's the creator of the mech. The most important thing is that he built it." The commotion immediately caught the attention of Commander Sinzantin and Academician Zengengru. They looked at me, dressed in grease-stained overalls and looking like a total wreck. Zhen Hongru didn't even consider for a second that I could be the chief engineer. Not in that state. Linsington gave Sinzantin a sharp, firm salute. Sinzantin started to grill me about my identity, but I didn't care who he was. I didn't have time to waste on these big shots. I slipped past Zhen Gongru like an eel, moving with pure determination. I sprinted toward the mech under the shocked gazes of everyone watching. I expertly scaled the side of the massive machine. I pried open a hidden armor plate to reach the manual override. The keyboard backlight was still flickering with life. I let out a breath of relief and hammered in the commands. With a heavy hiss of hydraulic pressure, the massive chest plates slowly ground open. Finally, the interior cockpit was revealed. I poked my head inside and felt my blood pressure skyrocket. Little Lucia wasn't just unharmed. She was fast asleep on her back, exhausted. I really couldn't help myself. I was about to give her a piece of my mind. This little troublemaker deserved a good scolding for the scare she gave me. I gave her 2 quick swats on her backside to wake her up. I originally wanted to lecture her a bit more on safety, but Academician Zhen Gongru was already lunging toward me like he'd seen a goddess. He grabbed me by the arm, his beard practically twitching with excitement. He was shaking with so much energy, he could barely stand still. "Kid, tell me, what was the strategic purpose behind building this mech? Is it for missile defense, or perhaps deep space exploration?" I gave it to him straight, no filters. There was no strategic purpose at all. "This is just a promotional prop I made for the local science fiction week event. The sub-district office said they'd pay me 100,000 yuan if I finished it." Even the usually stoic Commander Sinzantin looked completely baffled. "How much? 100,000? Are you saying you built a giant mech of this scale for only 100,000 yuan? An 18-meter-tall machine, and you did it for that pocket change?" Sinzantin stared at the massive steel structure, unable to believe his ears. "This mech must weigh at least 20 tons, doesn't it? Structural steel costs over 1,000 yuan per ton these days. You wouldn't even cover the cost of scrap metal." Zhen Gongru just stood there with a look of pure disbelief on his face. I told him I'd done my research at the local scrap yards. If you buy it as junk, the cost is only about 400 yuan per ton. By my calculations, I could still clear about 10,000 yuan in profit. Sinzantin nodded slowly, repeating the figure. "So you still made 10,000? Hearing that, my pride took a bit of a hit. I shook my head and told him he clearly didn't understand the cost of living. To me, 100,000 yuan is a massive fortune. Selling this for scrap wouldn't get me nearly that much. The group of military technicians surrounding me all stood there with their jaws on the floor. It was the first time they'd heard of top-tier national defense tech being built just to make a quick buck. Zhen Gongru felt like his brain's CPU was starting to overheat and smoke. But he was a world-class scientist after all, and he immediately caught on to a specific detail. Why would a sub-district office ask for a giant mech instead of a normal cement sculpture? In that instant, Sinzantin caught the faint scent of a conspiracy. Maybe the sub-district office had discovered a genius and was exploiting him. Or perhaps economic hardship was being used to force the distribution of new weapons. This had all the markings of a trick by foreign spies. Shenzian's gaze turned cold, operating on the principle that it's better to arrest an innocent than let a threat escape. He gave a silent signal to his confidential secretary to take the person into custody. Just talking about it makes my blood boil. I gritted my teeth and started venting to the old man. He actually told me it would be better if this thing could move. Can you believe that? Does he have any idea how complex the dynamics are to make a humanoid robot walk? The more I spoke, the more worked up I got, but I wasn't about to let him question my skills. So, in a fit of pure rage, I redesigned every single component from the ground up. I overhauled everything from the neural conduction system to the hydraulics. I said it all with total indifference. But for Zhen Gongru and Shenzian, my words hit them like a physical shockwave. A giant robot that could actually move? They were now convinced that the sub-district director was a deep-cover sleeper agent. At that moment, Zhen Gongru looked like a student starving for knowledge. He stammered, I just have one question. How did you get a massive steel mech like this? To weigh only 20 tons? I shrugged. It's simple. I pointed toward the mech's outer casing and asked if he'd ever heard of carbon fiber. I explained that I restructured the carbon and iron atoms at a molecular level. I organized them into a honeycomb structure similar to carbon-12. The resulting composite armored steel is solid, lightweight, and incredibly strong. Perfect for the chassis logistics. The chassis. Zhen Gongru practically fell to his knees. It was a stroke of pure genius. Then he asked, so, you added wings so it can fly? I looked at him and said, it can't fly at all. Those are just for aesthetics. I shattered the old expert's fantasy with a single sentence. That nozzle back there, it's just an ornament. Unless I had a nuclear-powered engine, flight is impossible. Current battery technology simply can't handle the load. This is just for mechanics. Using it in a real war would be like carrying a giant torch. The more we talked, the more we clicked, and Zhen Gongru realized something. This young man was a one-man military-industrial complex. Right at that moment, the unfortunate sub-district director, Zhao Dezu, was being dragged in by soldiers from the special forces. Zhao Dezu looked completely dazed. He'd been sleeping at home when they burst in and threw a bag over his head. When they finally ripped the hood off, he was still wearing SpongeBob pajamas and a look of pure confusion. He actually tried to take the moral high ground. The moment he saw me, he thought I was the one who had kidnapped him. I only introduced you to this job because I saw your son was struggling. You can't repay a favor with such hostility. How much money do you want? I'll pay you back. Shenzian stepped forward with a stern face and snapped, stop talking nonsense, and dropped the threatening attitude. Who is your superior contact? Why did you instruct Liu Gang to manufacture heavy weapons of war? Zhao Dezu dropped to his knees on the spot, terrified, and cried, Chief, I'm being framed. I'm just a lowly sub-district office head, I swear. I just wanted the giant robot to look impressive for Science Fiction Week. I heard he was a master welder. That's the only reason I sought him out. How was I supposed to know he could actually build a Gundam? Zhao Dezu wailed, banging his head on the floor. Then he caught sight of the massive mecha standing behind him. He turned pale with fright and nearly fainted from the shock. Zhen Gongru listened to the whole exchange from the side. He pointed at Zhao Dezu and asked me, so, this thing is really just an ornament? You just made it move because of some casual request? You really built this? I scratched my head awkwardly and said, sure did. I'm a craftsman. I have a reputation to protect, don't I? Old man Zhen couldn't help himself and burst out laughing. Zhen Gongru laughed with pure relief and said, fine, this is one hell of an ornament. If it weren't for this ornament, where else would the country find a wild genius like you? Xiao Lu, how about our institute buys this mecha? No way. I refused him flat out, because a man has to be honest. I promised Director Zhao I'd use it for the Science Fiction Week promotion. Shenzian stood there, completely dumbfounded. You're going to use this weapon of mass destruction to support a local street office? I think Liu Gang is right, Zhen Gongru said with a knowing smile. If something this advanced is actually put on display, who would ever believe it's real? It's the perfect smokescreen. Shenzian understood instantly and turned his gaze towards Zhao Dezu. We want the property rights to this mecha, but the exhibition goes on as planned. However, you must sign a non-disclosure agreement. Keep your mouth shut. Zhao Dezu didn't dare say no. He nodded like his life depended on it. But right at that moment, I let out a miserable cry. Everyone jumped back in shock, thinking the mecha was about to self-destruct. I stared at my watch in a total panic. It was almost 9 a.m. My son still had to get to kindergarten, and his perfect attendance award was slipping away. Shenzian felt a massive headache coming on just looking at me. A national treasure-level expert was actually losing his mind over being late for preschool. Shenzian waved his hand in total helplessness. Officer Lin, take the kid to school in a police car with the sirens blaring. Call the principal immediately. Tell them he's late because of a top-secret national security mission. And remember to pick Liu Gang up this evening. I watched the police car speed away into the distance. Shenzian let his smile fade instantly. He pulled out an encrypted satellite phone with a solemn expression. Hello, this is Shenzian. Patch me through to the Ministry of Defense right now. I have a high-level secret to report. As soon as Shenzian left, Zhen Gongru stepped into the empty spot. The old man dropped his serious face and bombarded me with a grin. Xiao Lu, are you interested in joining the research institute? Staying at this scrapyard is a complete waste. A talent like yours deserves better than a pile of junk. I scratched my head and told him the truth. This place was my home and my livelihood. With technology this advanced, why haven't you looked for a real job before? Zen Gongru frowned in annoyance, clearly not believing a word I said. I told him I used to be a locksmith at a factory, but with the pressure of buying a house and school fees, the weight on my back was suffocating. Don't even mention it. It's just embarrassing, so I'm trying to move past it. Zen Gongru is an expert at reading people, so seeing my struggle, he didn't push. What are you thinking? Are you really not going to join the institute? I thought about it for a moment and shook my head. I'm sorry, but I won't go. The institute is great, but I know my own limits. Unlocking the tech system requires burning through cash like crazy. How many years would it take to get ahead just relying on a fixed salary? Even if I had the funds, I'd have to explain every cent I spent to the board. The headaches would be far greater than the benefits. Zen Gongru looked at me with an expression of pure pity, but he didn't give up. I come from nothing, no education, no background, and I'm terrible at office politics. I can't just walk into an institute and end up unemployed because I can't play the game. It's easier to fight alone, but I told him we could still cooperate. Once I have the money, I'll start a tech company. You can send any good projects my way. Zen Gongru sighed, knowing that geniuses in technology are often a bit eccentric. Since I didn't shut the door completely, he decided to take the compromise. The Research Institute approved $200 million to buy the mecha and rent the scrapyard. They wanted to use it for a sci-fi promotion week to show off for the public. $200 million. The number sounded terrifyingly beautiful, like a spring rain. I was so happy that my grin practically split my face from ear to ear. We headed straight for the kindergarten. Lin Jianjun took the wheel as our driver. His daughter sat in the back, keeping Lucia company. Old Lin's heart was racing a mile a minute. He had recognized those 3 golden stars, the ones shining on Zen Gongru's epaulets. A high-ranking official like that was orbiting me, proving I wasn't just some junk collector. So, Lucia, what does your father do? And your mother? Lin Jianjun was a sly one, trying to fish for information from a child. My dad has a recycling center. Neighbors say he's good, but some say he's a fool who can't make money. And Grandma says my mom went somewhere very far away and can't come back. Seeing the little girl's mood darken, Lin Sutton stepped in. She shot her father a sharp, warning glare. She quickly pulled out a piece of candy. Lucia, don't listen to him. Are you hungry? I'll take you to get some breakfast. And then I'll drop you off at school, okay? Unexpectedly, Lucia's eyes lit up as she stared at Lin Sutton. Big sister, you're a police officer and you're so pretty. Why don't you be my new mommy? Lin Sutton froze instantly, her entire body going numb from the shock. Why are you wearing a hat now? Lin Jianjun was about to burst out laughing, but then he remembered this was his own daughter speaking. His face turned green instantly. Hey, Lucia, this big sister is only in her 20s. How old is your father? Old Lin quickly interrupted. My dad is also in his 20s. Look, sister, my dad is tall and handsome. Except for being a bit poor, he doesn't frown, smoke, or drink. If you marry my dad, you get a big daughter like me for a total bargain. Lucia's little eyes sparkled as she tried her hardest to sell her own father. Hearing 20s, Lin Jianjun started painting a picture in his mind. Recycling center, young boss, single father with a kid. The character profile was complete, but it was time to change the subject. Lin Sutton was dying of embarrassment. She felt like curling her toes and disappearing into the floor. By the way, Lucia, when is your birthday? What gift do you want? July 3rd. Lucia's high spirits suddenly plummeted at the mention of that date. She lowered her voice and whispered, if it's possible. The birthday gift Lucia wants is a new mom. My heart skipped a beat when I heard that. Dad said if I have a new mom, she'll love me very much. Big sister, I think you're great. You can be my new mom. I looked into Lucia's longing eyes and felt a lump in my throat. The softest part of my heart ached for her. Who says kids are too small to understand? She was just hiding her worries because she didn't want her father to be sad. I hugged the little girl tight without a word, my eyes turning red instantly. Lin Jianjun, who was driving, secretly wiped away a tear and forced a smile. Fine, Grandpa decides you'll be her goddaughter from now on. Call me Grandpa. If anyone dares to bully you at school, come straight to the Ranchan Street police station. Let's see who dares to touch you then. So, can big sister be my new mom? The girl asked, still reluctant to let go. I thought to myself, this kid is persistent. Let your father spend more time with her in the future, okay? Lin Jianjun laughed on the outside, but inside, he was cursing up a storm. Where did this little wild boar come from, trying to dig up my prize cabbage? But looking at her cute face, I didn't have the heart to crush her fantasy. The two of them bickered all through breakfast and the entire drive over. It was nearly 10 a.m. by the time I finally handed the girl over to her teacher. Just then, a frantic call from Kaidi Hun reached the branch chief, Lin Jianjun. He wondered why his old comrade was looking for him at a time like this. Lin, get back to the station right now. Immediately, we have a mission. By the way, is your daughter with you? Kaidi Hun's voice was urgent. Give her a few days off. She doesn't need to do anything else. Just have her stay by that little girl's side. Lin Jianjun was furious, shouting, what do you mean? Are you using my daughter as a babysitter? I can't explain it right now. Just get back here, and I'll tell you everything. After barking out the instructions, Kaidi Hun added one more thing. Tell your daughter to wait at the kindergarten entrance and not go anywhere. Lin Jianjun was confused, but he knew his old friend well. He knew the man wouldn't act this way without a serious reason. He told me to keep watch one more time at the corner of the main entrance. Then he slammed on the gas and sped back toward the station. When he arrived at the precinct, he saw the entire branch was in a state of absolute chaos. Kaidi Hun grabbed him instantly, yelling, "Lin, pack your things, fast. Pack your daughter's things too. What's going on? Have the demons invaded us? Why are we packing everything up?" Lin Jianjun stood there, completely stunned. "What the hell? You think demons are the ones screwing us over? You think demons would let you run?" Kaidi Hun kicked him. "Orders from the top. The whole station moves in 3 days. A total relocation, a demolition. The entire precinct was being uprooted. No, the Ministry of Public Security ordered us to move right here." Kaidi Hun looked bitter as he held up the new address. "Either we move, or they fire every single one of us from the top down." Lin Jianjun leaned in to take a look and lost his voice. He was speechless. "Isn't this the scrapyard?" He thought about it for a second. It was all low-income housing. It was the area with the highest emergency call rate in the city. Then he remembered the confidentiality agreement for the general's Mecca from this morning. Lin Jianjun understood everything in an instant. "Why is this place so special?" Kaidi Hun asked. "Children shouldn't stick their noses into the business of education. Leave it to the adults." Lin Jianjun gave a mischievous smile. "Are you lying to me?" Ignoring him, Kaidi Hun raised his foot and kicked him again. "I didn't dare go into details, but I guessed the ministry's true intention. They were moving our entire police station for one reason: to act as personal bodyguards for that community. We were there to watch over those 2 women 24 hours a day." Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the southern mountainous region. The charging process was finally complete. "That was fast," Wan Bowen exclaimed. His sudden shout startled Zhen Kongru. "It took exactly 4 minutes and 26 seconds. Xiaolu, what kind of batteries are these?" Zhen Kongru stared at the readings, his eyes wide with shock. He checked his watch, grinning from ear to ear. The country had been losing money on fuel-based vehicles for years. They wanted to develop green energy, but the tech was being throttled. Foreign powers had us by the throat. This battery technology was nothing short of a godsend. "I'll share the technical data with you later," I said calmly. "I have no intention of hiding it." "Chief Zhen man, cheer up. I'd be embarrassed to accept these for free. This deal is more than worth it." Zhen Kongru stared at the gleaming white mecha, his eyes full of stars. "Can I go inside the cockpit to take a look?" "Sure." He climbed into the spherical panoramic cockpit. Zhen Kongru's jaw nearly hit the floor. The space inside was massive, but the Real kicker was the driver's seat. It was completely suspended. "This is a cockpit suspension system," I explained. "It uses photoelectric induction to transmit signals. There's far less signal loss than you'd get with cable transmission." I watched him standing there dazed and kept explaining casually. "Photoelectric induction isn't affected by material field interference. That's why the entire cockpit is made of superconductors." "Superconductors? Superconduction? At room temperature? You've achieved room temperature superconduction." Zhen Kongru screamed, his voice cracking with disbelief. "Yeah, I have the tech, but I don't build reactors because I lack the money and materials. I'm broke." And Zhen Kongru finally gave up trying to understand. He just wanted to see my workshop and understand how I worked. He wanted to see the environment where I created this god-tier technology. I didn't see any reason to refuse him. So, I took him back to the scrapyard. The moment he stepped into the yard, Zhen Kongru stared at the rust-covered ground and the piles of junk. The air was thick with the smell of waste and swarming with mosquitoes. The look on his face was absolutely priceless. He couldn't wrap his head around it, that a mecha destined to change history had actually been built in this pile of trash. "It's a bit of a mess, so please bear with me." Feeling a little embarrassed, I led him toward the assembly workshop. But as soon as the doors opened, his jaw dropped again. His eyes widened in shock. Another wave of disbelief hit him. This place couldn't even be compared to the high-end labs at Nansua. This was a completely different world from the scrap heap outside. He stared at the strange machines, unable to identify a single one. "That's the Lu compressor, my first-generation quantum compressor. I used it to compress metal chairs, mostly to pack scrap metal and sell it for cash." "You're using this thing to pack scrap metal?" Zhen Kongru's heart was racing. "Isn't it perfect? It combines gravity with magnetic compression. The nanomaterial even has a self-cleaning feature. Oil doesn't even stick to it. It's incredibly useful." After he heard that, Zhen Kongru looked at me like I was some kind of alien. "What is a genius?" "This is a genius. Right here, in this dilapidated scrapyard, lived a god-tier talent who could actually change the world. A talent like this would truly be wasted at the research institute. Letting me run free might actually be the best option. You said you wanted to start a business. Let's do it. Come on, tell me more of the details." While Zhen Kongru was busy, touring my workshop and taking it all in, the kindergarten on the other side of town was in total chaos. I had just said goodbye to Lin Sutton at the gate. The moment Alex walked inside, as soon as she walked into class, a group of kids swarmed her. "Lucia, who was that beautiful lady at the gate? Is she your mom?" Lucia had been at this school for 3 years, and no one had ever seen her mother. Even though the teachers tried their best to protect her, these kids had very big mouths. There were even rumors that I was just a gigolo kept by a rich woman, and that Lucia was an illegitimate child. Seeing Lin Sutton standing there in her police uniform was a massive shock. Lucia's best friend, Eduardo, stepped in front of her like a hen protecting her chicks. It's none of your business. What do you care if that's her mom or not? Are you just curious? Lucia, is it? One of the girls leaned in, desperate for the gossip. Lucia was in a great mood today. She felt bolder than ever before. She gave a firm, immediate nod. She wasn't hiding it anymore. Yes, that pretty lady is my new mom. I'm finally a kid who has a mother too. Truth is, I've thought about finding a mother for Lucia before, but I'm just a man with a heavy burden and a messy scrapyard. Women looking for marriage usually run away faster than rabbits the moment they see my living conditions and my empty pockets. It's become a real problem for Lucia, and the other kids mock her for it. Deep down, I know how much this weighs on her little heart. To Lucia, a mother is a sacred position. Once you have one, they become the most important person in your world. Nonsense. How can such a pretty lady be your mother? If she were, she would have shown up to the school meetings by now. A shrill, annoying voice interrupted the conversation. The one speaking was the class bully, Mao Uzi. He stood about 4 feet tall, but he weighed over 100 pounds, a real little butterball. Mao Uzi, what are you looking for now? Eduardo snapped, arms akimbo. Lucia isn't lying. She promised to be my mom this morning. Lucia cried, her face turning red. Mao Uzi laughed even harder when he heard that. Are you stupid? A real mother is the one who raises you from the start. Anyone who shows up later is just a wicked stepmother. Just wait, she'll probably replace you with a brother soon. You're just a brat trying to trick me. Lucia has a mother too. Tears welled up in Lucia's eyes as her lip began to tremble. Oh, look at that. She's going to cry. No wonder your mother doesn't want you. Then came the slap. In that split second, I saw something snap behind Lucia's eyes. The teacher and the nanny were so terrified they scrambled away. Everything was falling apart right at the kindergarten gates. I had just finished eating my meal. I grabbed a cold soda to wash it down and quench my thirst. The station was moving, and my father told me to keep a close eye on Lucia. I didn't know the reason, but I wasn't about to get careless. I'd barely taken 2 sips when I saw a teacher bolt out of the building. She was drenched in sweat, looking around frantically until she spotted my uniform. She ran toward me, trembling, desperate to tell me what had happened. Time seemed to freeze. The soda had tasted so good just a second ago. But then, my hand went weak. The bottle hit the pavement and the drink was gone. Sticky liquid splashed everywhere. Something was wrong, very wrong. The scene shifts back to the workshop in the southern mountains. Zen Hongru and I were discussing our business strategy. But as we talked, our shared professional habits as engineers took over. The conversation exploded into a deep dive on national defense technology. Zenongru looked at me like I was Doraemon, desperate to pick my brain. He even ordered his team to start analyzing the mecha systems immediately. Old Liu, I won't hide it from you. Our fighter jets still have major weaknesses. Which direction do you think our country should focus on? Aerospace engines or aerodynamic design? Zen Hongru looked at me with genuine humility, asking for my advice. Western 4th-generation planes were already filling the skies. But here, we were still messing around with 2nd-generation tech. If a real war broke out, we'd have to fill that gap with our own blood. Who could bear that? I looked at him and thought, since he's treating me like family, I'll tell him the absolute truth. Before I traveled back in time, I lived in the 2020s, an era where J-20 stealth fighters dominated the world. Right now, the rest of the world is still stuck in the late 20th century. How could I not know the way forward? I smiled and turned toward him. I reached into a pile of scrap and pulled out a random, hand-drawn blueprint. It was none other than the blueprints for the mighty J-20 fighter jet, the Mighty Dragon. Zen Hongru took one look at it, and his head started spinning. The aerodynamic design was flawless. The DSI air intakes looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Then he saw the performance specs scribbled in the margins. An expert knows immediately when they're looking at a masterpiece. If this thing were actually built, nothing else in the sky would matter. It would make the Western powers wet their pants in pure terror. In reality, I had even more advanced designs tucked away. I even had concepts developed by top-tier aerospace researchers. I had the full schematics for the J-35 right there with me. They were practically in my hands, but I decided not to pull them out yet. Building a life for myself was one thing, but introducing this level of combat technology now, it would be a total dimensional strike against the rest of the world. Zen Hongru stammered, Liu, sell this blueprint to our institute. To the research institute, just tell me, how much do you want? He was so overwhelmed with excitement that his entire body was shaking. The $200 million spent on the previous project was a drop in the bucket. That money was just for reverse engineering old tech. But this blueprint? This was a complete roadmap for the future. It could go into production immediately and dominate the skies. The value was simply incalculable. Before I could even think of a price, my stomach let out a loud protest. Zen Hongru's face flushed red as she tried to speak. Then, her own stomach roared right back at mine. She'd been dragged out of bed at dawn and hadn't had a drop of water since. I laughed and said, I'm starving too, honestly. I haven't eaten much either. I'll whip something up for us at my place. Zen Hongru didn't stand on ceremony and followed me. I nodded and led her toward a small compartment deeper inside the yard. She looked confused and asked, Wait, aren't we going to your house? I looked back at her and said, I live right here. I pushed open a small door covered in rust and steel stains. The smell of machine oil and damp mold hit her square in the face. Zen Hongru stood there, completely stunned. This wasn't a home. It was a cramped storage room with a makeshift bed. There was a table missing a leg and not a single window in sight. The only light in the room filtered in from the workshop outside. It was hard to believe that a blueprint capable of changing the world was actually drawn right here on this greasy, stained table. Zen Hongru's voice trembled as she asked, "Lu Gang, do you really live here?" I gave a small, weary nod and said, "Yeah. When I first got married, we had a real house. But then my wife ran off with another man. She couldn't handle the pressure of the debt. I couldn't pay the mortgage alone, so the bank eventually took everything. With what little money I had left, I rented this abandoned yard to survive." My tone was calm, as if I were telling someone else's story. But Zen Hongru felt a tight knot forming in her throat. "What about your job?" she asked. "With your skills?" "I was a senior welder at a state-owned firm, but the divorce ruined my reputation." I scratched my head with a bitter, self-deprecating smile. "The company said I was a disgrace, so they fired me." Zen Hongru's brows furrowed instantly in anger. "A senior welder is a national treasure," she snapped. "How could they fire you over something so trivial?" Even a blind man could see it was a setup. Someone wanted to clear space for a favorite and used the drama to steal my position. It's the classic story, a small pond with shallow water and too many turtles. Zen Hongru was about to dig deeper, likely planning to get me justice. Suddenly, the old Nokia in my pocket started ringing loudly. The second I answered the call, my entire expression shifted. I hung up the phone immediately, ready to bolt out of the workshop. "Elder, my daughter was hurt at her kindergarten. She's at the hospital. Please, look around on your own. I'll come back and finish our chat later." I threw the words over my shoulder and ran without looking back. Zen Hongru didn't even have a chance to stop me. "What are you staring at? Follow him and give him a ride. If he takes the bus, who knows when he'll get there." Zen Hongru barked the orders at the guard standing beside her. The higher-ups had already realized they hadn't recognized just how important I really was to the country. So, without making a scene, they had assigned a guard to protect me, though officially, he was there as Zen Hongru's security. But in reality, Zen Hongru already had bodyguards by his side. They weren't from the military, but from the Department of International Security, the agency specifically tasked with ensuring Zen Hongru's personal safety. Their security level was far higher than that of a single guard. But the guard in front of me clearly hadn't been on the job long. He didn't have a sharp eye for detail. His primary target had already bolted, and Zen Hongru had to snap at him just to make him realize it. The guard immediately gave chase, and soon, the roar of the car engine faded into the distance. Zen Hongru thought for a moment and made a phone call. He called his granddaughter, Zen Su. He asked her to bring over some dumplings before she left. He also told her to pick up some vegetables to cook here. He wanted us to eat together once I returned with my daughter. While waiting for his granddaughter, the old man paced idly through the workshop. Soon, his attention was caught by a pile of blueprints stacked randomly on a table. At first, he felt a bit intrusive for looking. He hesitated to move them, but then he remembered I told him to take a look before I left. So he didn't hold back. He was dying to know just how many interesting things were hidden in this place. He figured it would be easier to negotiate a price if he bought everything at once. But as he flipped through the pages, he realized this wasn't the fighter jet he'd seen before. This one was shaped like a hummingbird. A flood of questions raced through his mind. He could tell from the lines that this design was definitely a fighter. But since I hadn't drawn the weapon systems yet, nor the nozzle, nor even the vertical tail, he found it difficult to determine the aircraft's true purpose. However, as the director of the research institute, his knowledge was incredibly vast, based solely on the scale and the aerodynamic profile of the craft. Zen Hongru could see the technical depth of this machine. It was even more advanced than the John 20 design I had shown him earlier. "Good boy, you're holding out on me, aren't you?" But he quickly realized why I hadn't shown him this specific design the first time. The reason was simple. The country's current support facilities simply aren't up to the task. Building a single era-defining fighter jet isn't the hard part. The real challenge is maintaining combat power when the enemy starts mass-producing. As I thought about it, the design I gave him really was the optimal solution for right now. With that kind of vision and global strategy, I'm clearly no ordinary youth. He spent a long time flipping through that stack of designs again. Every page he pulled out made his eyes light up with wonder. He had to pause and process everything before he could even wrap his head around it. He was in awe of the fact that I was a true genius. The designs he saw next looked like conceptual drawings from a sci-fi movie. Thinking of the implications, Zen Hongru didn't hesitate to make a call. He called the museum department directly. It belongs to a military industry unit under Group A. Specifically, the AVI group controlled by the state. It's managed directly by the Council of Justice. After a soft voice answered on the other end, Zen Hongru spoke solemnly to the Prime Minister of the Republic. "I have an urgent matter to report to the INAO." After he hung up the phone, Zen Hongru let out a long sigh of relief. After hanging up, he felt a twinge of regret for being so impulsive. After all, this was the man who governed the entire nation. Disturbing the old man based on mere conjectures felt a bit abrupt. But the response I got couldn't have been better. The Prime Minister said only one thing: "We must appease Comrade Lu Qinyu." There was so much weight packed into that single sentence. It was practically a green light for Zen Hongru to do whatever was necessary, acting without restrictions as long as he stayed within the law. Treatment like this is exactly what a young genius like me deserves. He looked around the room one last time, thought for a moment, and then headed back inside the house. He had one more call to make. Hey, Lowly, I know a bank president like you is a busy man, but I need your help with something right now. In just half an hour, in the dead of night, a red property ownership certificate was issued. The bank manager delivered it personally to Zen Hongru. He opened it and looked at the owner column, which now bore my name. This time, Zen Hongru was making his move. Zen Saran also came to Zen Hongru's side. As soon as she arrived, she heard that her grandfather had used his own money to redeem a house for someone, a property worth millions. He had practically emptied his entire life savings. But Zen Saran didn't say much or ask any questions. She simply stayed quiet. She silently picked up the vegetables she had just bought to start preparing dinner. After handing over the property ownership certificate, the bank manager left immediately. The night grew still. Zen Hongru sat in the workshop, rhythmically tapping the cover of the certificate with his fingers. I wonder what kind of expression I'll have when I return and see that my house has been redeemed. The guard had just parked the car at the main entrance of the hospital when I jumped out of the vehicle. I ran quickly toward the hospital building. Lin Sutton was already there waiting at the entrance. Mr. Liu. As soon as he saw me, Lin Sutton spoke with an air of deep apology, saying, I'm so sorry, this was my oversight. I already know the details of what happened. I immediately tried to comfort Lin Sutton. Kids fight. You weren't at the kindergarten, so how could it be your fault? But Lin Sutton couldn't stop thinking about the battered state of little Lucia, and he still wanted to say more. I didn't wait. I headed straight for the hospital room. I saw Lucia lying in the bed, her face bruised and her head wrapped in gauze. My heart skipped a beat, and I had to forcefully suppress my rising rage. I forced myself to look calmly at the other people. In the room, besides the two teachers I already knew, there was also a well-dressed man and woman standing there. The man had a massive beer belly, and the woman was draped in expensive jewelry. Both of them looked to be in their late 30s or early 40s. When they saw me, the flash of disgust in the man's eyes vanished, and he immediately snapped, Are you this girl's father? Your daughter hit my son. Tell me, what are we going to do about this? The two kindergarten teachers stood there, completely stunned. They stared at the couple with looks of pure, utter shock. Look at my son's face, it's all red. I'm telling you, we aren't leaving until you give us proper compensation. As she spoke, the woman yanked back the curtain next to her. She revealed a bratty-looking boy sleeping in the adjacent bed. The boy's mother glared at me with a ferocious snarl. The caregivers and teachers tried to intervene immediately. It's clear your son is the one who beat her. Why are you? It takes two to tango, the woman interrupted. Why would my son hit her and not anyone else? It must be her daughter's fault. You can see my son's face is still flushed. Her daughter must have hit him first, she shrieked in a piercing voice. I want to understand what happened first, I said, ignoring them to keep my cool. I turned my gaze away from the couple and looked at Teacher E. We didn't actually see the process or the specific details of how it started. By the time we heard the other children screaming and rushed over, Asia was already in that state. Teacher E and Teacher Lu stood to the side, bowing their heads and apologizing over and over. Looking at their sincere faces, I couldn't bring myself to blame them. After all, managing 40 or 50 kids at once is no easy task. I knew how it was, but then a stout, elderly woman marched into the room. She was leading a little girl by the hand. It was Duo Duo. The moment the principal and teachers saw this woman, they immediately lowered their heads in submission. Duo Duo, tell me exactly what you saw, the old woman commanded coldly. Yes, Asia was the first one to hit Uzi, but Uzi started. The principal cut Duo Duo off before she could even finish her sentence. You heard her, Mr. Liu, your daughter was the one who hit him first. Regarding the compensation and any other issues, I don't want this affecting the reputation of our kindergarten. I expect both parents to settle this as quickly as possible. Did she really think I wouldn't see right through her? This old woman was clearly playing favorites and taking their side. I stepped toward Duo Duo and asked her gently, Sweetie, tell me, sweetie, what happened to it? Duo Duo's eyes immediately welled up with tears. Uzi was the one who started it, uncle. He said Asia didn't have a mom and that her mom hated her. Asia couldn't take it anymore and hit him. She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Uncle, Asia is hurt so bad. Is she going to die? No, sweetie, I won't let anything happen to her. I patted Duo Duo's head and gave her a small smile. Even if Uzi provoked her, Asia was still the one who threw the first punch. I knew I still owed Uzi's father an explanation for that. The old woman's face darkened after hearing Duo Duo's side of the story, but she still refused to look me in the eye, clearly favoring the wealthy family. I didn't respond to her immediately. I felt like I was in a completely different world. I walked over to the bedside table and picked up Asia's medical report. A 2-inch gash on her forehead, a severe injury. Thankfully, there were no fractures found. The nasal bone was intact and functioning normally, so they recommended conservative treatment. I set the medical report back down on the table. Then, I looked up and locked eyes with Uzi's family. My daughter hit your son first. I admit that. So, how am I supposed to account for your son beating my daughter? My son hitting your daughter was clearly self-defense. The woman said in a sharp, piercing voice. So, you're saying your son enjoyed it? You hurt my daughter, and you don't plan on taking any responsibility. I slowly unbuttoned the top button of my shirt. I knew I couldn't reason with these people. Since Asia acted first, it was true she shared some blame. But Duo made it very clear just a moment ago. After Asia was hit, Uzi kept chasing her and striking her. That is what caused Asia to get hurt so badly. The first strike you can call self-defense, but the pursuit? The subsequent blows were intentional damage, pure bullying. This was your daughter's fault. Why should we be responsible for her? What? Do you actually want to do something about it? The plump mother watched my movements and let out a sneer. A simple nobody like you, with no power or influence. You should just pay us and shut up, yet you dare to act tough? Uzi's father gave a mocking chuckle as he stepped toward me. Do you think we're bullying you? I looked into you. You're just the owner of a scrapyard. I'm absolutely bullying you, and what are you going to do about it? Don't forget your daughter has to go to kindergarten. How can you stop me? Fine, fine. I grit my teeth and pulled off my outer shirt. I tossed it onto the bed. Those two thought I was about to snap and attack them. They expected me to swing, but they just watched me throw my clothes aside. I simply turned around and walked to the other side of the room. Uzi's parents stepped closer, looking confused. Excuse me, there's one more thing. We'll discuss compensation later. Right now, I need to check on my daughter's condition. Are you two staying because you're waiting for a dinner invitation? I asked coldly. Piece of trash, Uzi's mother hissed. She spat on the floor and walked out with her husband and son. Before leaving, Uzi's father sneered. I'll give you 3 days. If you don't pay up by then, well, you'll see. I clenched my jaw, knowing I couldn't start a direct conflict yet. Even an ordinary man has his limits when pushed to the edge. I could paint this room red in 5 steps, but my daughter is my weakness now. Unless I kill the opponent outright, there's no ending this. Otherwise, the ultimate enemy will always find a way back. They'll take their revenge on me, and they'll take it on the old principal too. The principal left with a look of disdain, without even saying goodbye. Dad. 2 teachers approached me, looking embarrassed and ashamed. Teachers, it's not your fault. Thank you for bringing Scylla to the hospital. I didn't direct my anger at them. I just gave them a forced, weary smile. The 2 teachers could only look at me with pity. They sighed and told the doctor they hoped Scylla would recover quickly. We'll come back to check on her soon, they promised. Dad. After the teachers left, Lucilla slowly opened her eyes. She looked at me, her small face pale. Her eyes were brimming with tears as I spoke to her softly. I stroked her hair gently to calm her down. She looked at me and whispered something that broke my heart. Dad, the one who was wrong was Mom. She's just a little girl, yet she thinks she's the one at fault. She's always been so obedient. Knowing she did nothing wrong, I knelt down beside her. Sitting by that hospital bed, a wave of bitterness surged in my chest. Seeing my daughter act so mature in this moment just made my heart ache more. I haven't been in this world long, but the memories feel real. It feels like I've truly been by this girl's side for years. The truth is, I'm not even from Police City. I only moved here to give her a better education. I wanted her to have a chance to grow. I graduated from a top-tier university, yet I could only find work as a factory technician. And before I could even earn my senior title, I was fired. I have no connections and no money in this city. That's why Mao Uzi's family thinks they can be so bold and reckless. They either have deep pockets or powerful relatives. A man like me, with no roots here, can't afford to gamble with his life. I've only lived a fraction of these hardships, but the memories make the pain mine. Officer Lin, please, watch over Scylla for a moment. I'm going to find the doctor and see what the status is. Right then, Officer Lin Sutton stepped into the hospital room. I had no choice but to ask her to watch over Scylla for now. The girl has a fracture in her nasal bone, and the full extent of the damage is unclear. Because she's so young, we don't recommend an MRI scan. We can only monitor her and continue with a steady course of treatment. The doctor spoke while reviewing her medical history, opting for a conservative approach. He mentioned that she might end up with a permanent scar. I felt a pang of dread. She's just a little girl, after all. I couldn't bear to think about her living with a scar, but the doctor wouldn't rule it out. All right, thank you, I said, nodding as I processed the news. In this era, even CT scans haven't become common practice yet. An MRI is even more of a rarity. Only a few hospitals in the massive coastal cities actually have them. Police City might be the provincial capital, but it's far from the coast. So, naturally, the technology hasn't reached us yet. I had no choice but to head back and pack some clothes for Scylla. After finishing my conversation with Lin Sutton, I prepared to leave. The guard drove me back to the scrapyard. As I arrived, I saw Zhang Wenlong waiting for me. He greeted me with a wide smile. But as he got closer, his expression suddenly darkened when he saw my face. He rushed over, unable to hide his concern as he asked, Lu Gang, what's wrong? Did something happen to the girl? I tried to brush it off, telling him a childhood scuffle was nothing. Elder, could you come back another day? Scylla has to be hospitalized for observation for a while. I might not have time to talk to you about the project right now. Oh, then take care of that first. I'll have my granddaughter cook something for Scylla. Zhang Wenlong spoke calmly, but he wasn't about to let this go. As soon as I turned my back, he signaled the guard to come over. He demanded to know every single detail of what had happened. After hearing the guard's report, Zhang Wenlong's blood began to boil. He glanced back at me while I was still busy packing my things. He suppressed his rage, but his eyes were screaming. The audacity. This is pure lawlessness. Stay with them these next few days, he hissed to the guard in a low voice. Do you have any idea what the consequences are if something happens to them? If necessary, you have my permission to shoot. Zhang Wenlong knew things weren't as simple as they seemed. The moment he heard my daughter was hospitalized, he knew the truth. A simple playground fight doesn't end with a hospital stay. He never expected a pillar of the country like me to be oppressed this way. And that was just the start. He hadn't even considered the 2 blueprints he saw later. The mech I built with those new materials was a game changer. It was enough to spark a revolution in the country's entire military industry. My work alone could guarantee me a seat at the highest table. My name would be etched in the books of merit, and my family would live like royalty. Yet here they were, daring to oppress a pillar of the nation. The guard finally realized just how grave this situation had become. Public safety back then wasn't nearly as stable as the era I remembered. This was before Skynet surveillance had become a household name. Lawless organizations and underground gangs still crawled through the shadows. In those days, even the most elite experts could be taken out in an alley, let alone an ordinary man like me living in a scrapyard. The guard checked his weapon, his face grim. "I'll call old son and make the arrangements," Zhang Wenlong muttered. "I'm getting someone else to replace you on your regular shift. You're staying here tonight," he told the man with absolute solemnity. Without another word, he walked off to make the call. He reported that my daughter was being harassed and bullied, and that I, Lu Gang, was being directly threatened. Old son was absolutely stunned. The moment he picked up the phone. "Are there really people this reckless in the world?" he growled. Zhang confirmed it, saying they even knew my daughter was at the kindergarten. They were openly threatening me, trying to extort everything I had. Old Sin's expression turned cold and sharp. He wanted to know exactly who was bold enough to threaten a man who was basically the backbone of the engineering academy. "I know how the streets work," he said. "I'll find someone to end this." Old Sun was beyond furious. As the commander of the Southern War Zone in Mexico City, he knew a genius like me was a once-in-a-lifetime find. If I got hurt because of some ignorant thugs, he didn't deserve his rank. He had already briefed the Ministry of National Defense. He officially registered me as high-level special personnel. He demanded my personal guard be stationed right in the police zone. The official orders from Beijing would arrive in a few days, but he couldn't wait. He immediately dispatched a specialized team to investigate every detail of my family's situation. They headed straight for my home on the old Rongchong Street. Rongchong Street is a chaotic place where dragons and snakes mix. The living conditions there are far from ideal. Old Sun knew the house he helped me redeem was in a bad location for security. He remembered the Air Force family community had just opened a new complex. Give him the best of the best, Old Sun decided suddenly. He had already requested instructions from the top brass to support me. He was authorized to use any means necessary to protect my work. My daughter would be transferred to the elite Blue Sky Air Force kindergarten. Ordinary kindergartens fall under local education departments, but Blue Sky belongs directly to the Military Area Logistics Department. It isn't managed by the local government at all. Outsiders have no idea who is really in charge there. The gates of this kindergarten are guarded by armed military police. They ensure absolute security around the clock. This level of protection exists because the parents of these children are not ordinary citizens. They are high-ranking Air Force officers or top research scientists. Old Sen's Institute 611 was originally part of the military sequence. Even now, that connection remains unbreakable. Many children from the institute were already studying in that very garden. I was building a future for my daughter, and she was giving me a purpose. "There are some issues, but it's no big deal. I'll go coordinate it," Old Sun said. He laughed twice, hung up the phone, and went to handle the logistics. Once Old Sun finished arranging a proper place for my daughter and me, he turned his attention to the people who bullied her. He called Hinching National Security directly to set up a meeting. He brought both the military and the police departments together. They began investigating the entire incident and the power dynamics hidden behind the Mao family. If they had provoked Old Sun before, he might have only dealt with the 3 Maos. But now, I was registered as Project Number 0. If this wasn't handled perfectly, it would shake the entire national talent system. Many brilliant minds have returned to the country in recent years. But if the state can't even guarantee the basic safety of their families, how can they work for the nation with peace of mind? Old Sin knew he couldn't just settle things within the city this time. He had to crush the Mao family and make this a landmark case for the system. He wanted to send a clear message to anyone watching. National security personnel, usually tasked with catching foreign spies, joined forces with the police to dismantle the Mao family's entire network. The Mao family's reign was ending, and it only took 2 hours. Every piece of data on them was compiled into a single report. It landed on the desks of the Public Security Director and the Minister of Security. Even the commander of the Southwest Military Region was briefed. When the report revealed my daughter was bullied for 2 years, those 3 powerful leaders couldn't just sit still. They stared at the web of corruption the Mao family had woven. The Director of Provincial Public Security felt a chill run down his spine. He realized the gravity of the situation immediately. He was looking at a very big, very dirty fish. Mao Uzi's father, Mao Xiaoi, was the primary target. He operated several high-end nightclubs across the city. Meanwhile, the mother, Yi Geng, had her own dark secrets. She ran a prestigious dance academy for young children. A year ago, she snapped a young girl's lumbar vertebra during training. She left that child paralyzed for life. To this day, the family hasn't received a single cent in compensation. The girl whose life she ruined had tried to sue her, but every time they tried, they were met with violence, banging on their door at midnight and constant death threats. In the end, they could only surrender and resign themselves to their tragic fate. If it weren't for the situation involving the expert, Liu Gang, I never would have known people like this still existed in our city. It was pure, unadulterated evil in every sense of the word. Investigate them. The order came down. The Minister of National Security felt a chill of terror as well. This had escalated beyond a simple crime to a threat against the organization's credibility. It was now a matter of maintaining social stability. If this wasn't handled perfectly, the consequences would be dire. Several officials were stripped of their uniforms on the spot. Interrogating the Mao family was going to be a massive undertaking. But escaping justice was impossible now as the first knocks sounded on their door. It was the middle of the night. Company officials and business associates were rounded up in one giant sweep. From the major players to the small-time lackeys, more than 30 people were placed under arrest. After a full night of processing, the evidence against them was a mountain. Yet the three members of the Mao family hadn't realized the walls were closing in at all. Mao Uzi woke up early that morning, screaming that she wanted a hamburger. Jack Wei and Mao Xiai were getting ready to take their son to school. The family was just about to sit down for breakfast. Then came the knock at the door. Bam, bam, bam. I wondered who could be calling this early in the morning. Jekyll grew impatient, shouting, "Is it the neighborhood committee?" A voice outside said they were delivering rice, flour, and oil. "We have a delivery for you. Please open up," the voice continued. He grumbled about why they were giving out supplies when it wasn't even a holiday. Still, Yekui opened the door, and in that split second, a swarm of armed police appeared. The officers stormed into the apartment like a tidal wave. They tackled Yekui and pinned him to the floor instantly. Mao Xiai had been involved in dangerous business for a long time. The moment he heard the door being kicked in, his survival instinct kicked in. He tried to bolt, but a voice behind him barked, "Don't move." The warning was clear. If he ran, they would shoot. He froze, realizing he had no choice but to surrender to his fate. He slowly raised his hands and looked back in a daze. That was when the reality of the situation finally hit him. Dozens of officers, armed to the teeth, had completely occupied his home. Every single one of them was leveled a submachine gun right at his chest. I knew he must have imagined how his story would end, but he never expected an entire army of police and soldiers to swarm his home. Later, the police began uncovering a mountain of evidence inside Mao's house. The most damning discovery was a handgun hidden right there in the open. That single weapon pushed the charges against the Mao family to a whole new level. A female officer led Musi away since he was still a minor. Mao Xiai glared at the officers and spat out, "How did you even find me? Do you have any idea who is backing me?" Even as they hauled away crates of criminal records, Mao Xiai didn't panic. He thought his superiors were untouchable. I looked at him and asked, "Are you talking about Xiao Deguan or Li Chen? If you think those two are your protective umbrella, you're mistaken, because you'll be seeing both of them very soon." The chief of police had been dispatched directly by the top brass. The Department of Public Security wasn't taking any chances. They were there to oversee the entire transition personally. The moment Mao Xiai heard those two names, the color drained from his face. Those men were high-ranking provincial officials. They were his most powerful contacts and his only pride. He started trembling and shouted, "I want to see my lawyer." "You don't need a lawyer. You're headed for a military tribunal." The police chief cleared his throat and ordered his men to haul Mao Xiai and Yi Kuizhou away. I finished packing my things and prepared to head to the hospital to check on Lucia. Chen Saran followed right behind me. She was carrying 2 thermal food containers in her hands. I gave her a small smile and didn't say a word. Saran waved the containers at me playfully. She walked by my side as we made our way to the hospital. I didn't have the heart to send her away. When we finally arrived at the ward, I saw the little girl with gauze on her nose and bandages wrapped around her head. Seeing her like that made Chun Saran's heart sink. She had seen her just this morning, a happy little girl running around the house. How could she end up in this state by nightfall? "Lucia, do you want to sit up and have a little bite to eat?" The little girl looked up, saw me, and then turned her gaze toward Saran. Saran opened the thermos as if she were revealing a hidden treasure. She pulled out the meal she had personally prepared. Lucia looked at her, still sounding weak, and whispered, "Big sister, can I ask you a favor?" "Of course, sweetie, anything. As long as I can do it," Saran replied. "I'll say yes." Chun Saran had this warm, intellectual beauty about her. She carried herself with an approachable, gentle grace. Compared to Lin Sudong's cold severity, they both had their own unique charms. "Can you be Lucia's mommy?" Lucia's words caught Chun Saran completely off guard. She stood there frozen, not knowing how to respond. But someone else's defenses crumbled first. Lin Sutong stared at Lucia with a look of pure shock, as if asking, "Me too?" I watched the two beauties standing there, facing each other in silence. I realized my little treasure was at it again. She was already busy trying to build a full house for me. I leaned over the bed and asked Lucia softly, "Why do you want Sister Saran to be your mommy?" Lucia's nose was badly hurt, making her voice sound muffled and thick. But she still forced a smile and said, "Lucia never knew her real parents. I don't know what it's like to have a mother who loves me, but I think Sister Saran and Sister Sudong are both so good to me. So I want them both to be my mommy. That way, Lucia will have two moms to take care of her in the future. She'd definitely be happier having two moms instead of just one. Lin Sudong finally understood Lucia's simple logic. She realized this was just a little girl's innocent greed. Chun Saran's expression softened, a hint of shyness flickering in her eyes. Then Lucia has to listen to Mommy Saran and eat well, she said softly. That's the only way you'll recover quickly. Right then, a sudden knock echoed at the hospital room door. Chun Saran stood up quickly to answer it. When she saw it was her grandfather standing there, she looked surprised and asked, "Grandpa, what are you doing here?" Lin Sudong saw Chun Gongru appear and reacted immediately. She told me, "Go on, I'll stay here and look after Lucia for you." Feeling a bit awkward, I gave Sudong a quick nod of thanks. I walked over to Chun Gongru at the door and greeted him, "Elder." Before I could say more, he cut me off and signaled for me to follow him outside. He didn't want us to disturb Lucia, and Chun Saran followed close behind. I remembered my promise to help the old man transport the mecha to Essanon. But Chun Gongru's first question was, "How is Lucia? Is it serious?" Hearing that, a wave of warmth hit my chest, and I answered immediately. A couple of broken ribs, an 8-centimeter bruise, and 3 stitches on top. Chun Gongru felt a pang of guilt and pity looking at the child's bandaged head. But he didn't want to add to my burden right now. He immediately changed the subject, saying, "I'll have someone handle the fallout, don't worry. But have you thought about changing Lucia's environment?" I frowned, repeating his words. Changing the environment? I didn't get it. Lucia was already enrolled in a decent public kindergarten. The teaching resources there are lacking, and the student quality is inconsistent, he noted. It's hard to guarantee today's incident won't happen again. I have connections. Let's get her a transfer, he continued, so she can finish her final year of kindergarten somewhere safe. Chun Gongru didn't just offer words. He reached into his coat. He handed me an official admission letter right then and there. I felt a wave of embarrassment. This old man was doing too much for me. I instinctively moved to hand the letter back to him. But then I saw the name on the envelope and froze. It was for Lantian Kindergarten, an elite school managed by the Military Logistics Department. Ordinary people couldn't get in there, no matter how much money they had. In terms of faculty quality, security, and family backgrounds, the resources at Lantian were leagues above any other school in the city. "Take it," he insisted. "Your status is different now. If you won't think of yourself, you must at least think of Lucia," he said. "The technology you possess is vital, and keeping it secure is our priority. But with that kind of value, can you really say there aren't people targeting you? Right now, your personal safety and your daughter's security are everything." Chun Gongru spoke with a heavy, unwavering seriousness. Hearing his words, I felt my resolve begin to waver. Even coming from a future where the world seemed more transparent, I knew that peace was often just a fragile surface. The shadows are always full of those waiting to betray you. In this parallel world, where even basic surveillance is scarce, I realized I truly needed to be better prepared. Seeing my hesitation, Chun Gongru pressed his advantage immediately. "The higher-ups are already helping you reclaim your old family home," he added. "But that house is far too distant from Lantian Kindergarten. I happen to own a property in the Air Force residential complex nearby. What do you say we negotiate a trade?" Chun Gongru knew I was a man with a massive amount of pride. He knew that despite my potential wealth, I wouldn't just take a handout. That was why I was still living in a cramped, dusty junkyard. Fortunately, Chun Gongru knew exactly how to frame the offer. It was a reward to bring me legitimately under the state's protection. At the same time, it solved all my immediate living problems. As he spoke, Chun Gongru pulled out 2 documents. They were property deeds. He handed them over, confident I would make the right choice. I took the deed and glanced at the details of the house. It was located right inside the Air Force residential complex. Suddenly, my eyes widened in shock. This place was massive compared to my old 100-square-meter home. "Elder Chun, this is far too much," I said. "I can't take advantage of your kindness like this." I moved to hand the property certificate back to him. But Chun Gongru just smiled and waved my concerns away. "Houses are meant for living," he said. "Size doesn't matter much. Besides, I already sent people to move your luggage and clean the place." Hearing him talk about moving my things felt strange yet comforting. He had been right there on the scene, personally directing the move. He watched as they packed up everything my daughter and I owned. He discovered that after everything was boxed up, even including the pots and pans, it barely filled a single crate. It was clear just how frugal our lives had been, just my daughter and I. Hearing that Chun Gongru had already taken charge left me speechless. He had made the decision and moved my things before I could even blink. I couldn't refuse him anymore. I tried to hand my original property certificate over to Chun Gongru instead. "Then please, thank the state on my behalf," I said. But Chun Gongru just shook his head. He pushed the old property deed back toward me. "Keep it for now," he insisted. "Wait a while, and when we have time, we'll discuss the transfer." Of course, this was just a little scheme of Chun Gongru's. He knew if he delayed it, the matter would eventually be forgotten. In his eyes, my old apartment was worth very little anyway. He was a man of status. He had no intention of taking it. This was his way of looking out for a promising young talent like me. "In the future, you have to push yourself," he told me. "You need to turn the things in your drawings into reality. Work hard and put your experience into practice. He wanted to see my blueprints come to life. Chen Gongru has high hopes for me, and that's why he's giving me his all. He's seen everything I have, and I felt a bit embarrassed. They're just idle scribbles, I muttered. Finally, we reached an agreement for when Lucia is feeling better. We'll discuss the details of opening my own company later on. My mission for tonight is to help transport the mecha. Zhen Shuren and Lin Sutton stayed behind to look after Lucia. Chen Gongru drove me out to the southern mountainous region. The entire area had already been designated as a restricted military zone. Professor, a voice called out. Upon seeing Chen Gongru, Joan Boyan immediately stepped forward to greet him. I've been trying to copy the data all day, he reported. I've been trying to analyze the operating system as well, but it's impossible to crack the mecha's code. Joan Boyan held out a laptop, showing the data on the screen to his professor. Chen Gongru took the computer and furrowed his brow. He stared intensely at the data flashing in front of him. Then, he turned his gaze toward me. I glanced at the screen in Chen Gongru's hand and gave a small smile. The reason is simple. Your computer's processing power isn't enough for this architecture. It's too old to keep up with the internal processor integrated into the mecha. That's why you can't even get the data to sync. I recognized the computer right away. It was an IBM, a top-tier model from back in the day. The perfect balance of high performance and portability. But the operating system installed on it wasn't standard. It didn't come from Microsoft or any other major corporation. It was a pure Chinese OS, built entirely with Chinese characters. Clearly, it was a custom, self-developed operating system. They did this for a reason, to prevent any hidden backdoors. They couldn't risk the system stealing sensitive data or information. My explanation caught Chen Gongru's attention, and the old man had to ask, Lu Gang, is your mecha also equipped with a self-developed system? Yes, because it uses my own custom-designed brainwave induction system. At the same time, it has to be equipped with a light control system. The photoelectric transmission must be fully compatible with the OS. It also handles motion sensing, so building this from scratch was incredibly difficult. I remembered the days of sketching and coding without sleep. Just thinking about that grind made my head ache. So your system can actually calculate that? Chen Gongru guessed my system was something special and pressed for more. It's possible, but with the current hardware available in China. Actually, most hardware in the world right now can't handle my OS. I just smiled. Wan Boyan started to argue about their domestic chips, then froze, remembering it was classified. I looked at them and kept going. The old man must know that hardware processing speed is directly tied to the precision of the manufacturing technology. If I'm not mistaken, the precision of the chips you can currently make, right here in China, is only about 150 nanometers. The moment those words left my mouth, the room went dead silent. They stared at me with wide eyes, completely stunned. That number was a state secret, and Daxiao was still struggling to catch up. Their self-developed chips hadn't even truly mastered the nanoscale yet. Most were still stuck in the microscale era. 150 nanometers was the absolute limit of their domestic tech. I didn't stop there. The processor installed in my mecha can perform 60 million calculations per second. Without that speed, processing real-time data transmission would be impossible. To be honest, I was actually lowballing the numbers. The core processor in this mecha is on a whole different level. I got it from my beginner's gift pack, so I didn't develop it myself. If I want the tech specs, I'll have to unlock quantum chip blueprints step by step. Chen Gongru immediately realized the implications of the tech inside my mecha. His eyes lit up as he asked, Xiao Lu, is this thing running a quantum processor? Is the chip precision already below 5 nanometers? I simply nodded. Standing beside him, Wan Boyan was so shocked he couldn't even speak. He was a top student from the University of Science and Technology of China. There was no way he didn't understand the weight of quantum processors. Our current national supercomputer, the Sunway, only hits about 3,240 trillion operations. But the efficiency of a processor inside a mobile unit is what really matters. My mecha's processing power is nearly 20,000 times greater than the Sunway. It was insane, and a quantum processor was the only logical explanation. Once chip precision drops below 5 nanometers, quantum tunneling effects take over. That's the fundamental principle that turns a computer into a quantum system. When you reach that level of precision, the impossible becomes reality. At that level, the computing power of quantum computers increases geometrically. Processing speed and efficiency simply skyrocket. It's no wonder my small computer couldn't handle it. A standard laptop doesn't stand a chance at analyzing this mecha's data. Even if we took this to the research institute, I doubt we could understand it. Chen Gongru sighed. Being one step ahead makes you a genius, but being 100 years ahead is terrifying. If you showed a smartphone to someone from the Qing dynasty, they'd just call it sorcery. All right, let's stop debating this for now, he said. We'll talk more after Science Fiction Week is over. Chen Gongru was surprisingly open-minded about the whole thing. The technology was right there in front of him. We could discuss building a quantum computer when the time was right. As he was speaking, I prepared to move. I planned to pilot the mecha onto the pre-arranged transport platform. The platform came straight from the military district, usually used for heavy vehicles. Suddenly, old man Chen Gongru seemed to have an idea. He looked up and asked, Xiao Lu, can I ride up there with you? Sure you can, but the passenger seat is a bit tight, I replied. When I first designed this cockpit, I considered if parents would want to sit with their kids. I just didn't expect a world-class scientist to be the one asking for a seat. I installed a co-pilot seat, but it was really just a version meant for kids. Once the old man sat down, his entire body was squeezed into the small chair. It looked like a pretty uncomfortable fit for someone his age. "You can start now," he said. Shin Gongru gave me the signal to begin loading the mecha onto the platform. I reached out and initiated the system. The cockpit locked into place and shifted smoothly. The 360-degree panoramic monitor hummed to life. It began capturing every single detail of the surrounding area. Outside, the crowd watched as a cyan light ignited in the mecha's eyes. The 18-meter giant sat up, rose slowly, and stood tall under the night sky. It towered over the earth like a mechanical god. Then, I guided it to lie down on the transport platform prepared for the event. It settled into position, waiting to be loaded and secured for the trip. Even during these simple movements, the mecha's fluidity was indistinguishable from a human's. It lacked the stiff, clunky movements you'd expect from a giant robot. Shen Gongru watched my every move from the passenger seat, completely stunned. He realized that if this operating system were installed in a command aircraft, it would skyrocket the combat capabilities of any fighter jet. He couldn't take his eyes off the interface, especially this specific system. The system was so intuitive that even a small child could operate it. The next day, the Science Fiction Week kicked off on Rongchong Street. Countless children stood frozen in awe at the sight of the machine. An 18-meter-tall mechanical giant loomed over the crowd. The color scheme was particularly striking. A sleek blue and white finish with massive white wings spanning the back. It left an unforgettable impression on every single person who saw it. The Rongchong Street office, as the organizing body, finally understood what it meant for a city to be truly overcrowded. Even though short-form videos didn't exist in this era yet, word of mouth spread like wildfire through the city. People who visited the first day called every relative and friend to come back with them. The hype exploded when they learned they could actually pay to enter. I opened up the cockpit for those willing to pay for a seat inside. The crowd erupted in cheers. It wasn't just children lining up, it was a massive group of grown men. After all, what man doesn't have a soft spot for giant robots? After several days, Rongchong Street hadn't just used this trick for publicity. They had brought a massive wave of business to every shop in the area. Director Zhao Dezu was already being fast-tracked for a major promotion. He was set to reach new heights by the end of the year thanks to these achievements. The next morning arrived. I didn't head back to Science Fiction Week to join the festivities. I still had to look after my daughter. I saw Lin Sudong off early that morning. Vicente Gongro and his team had brought the police by earlier. They handled a mountain of paperwork, and I was grateful for it. Once they left, I looked over at Lucia again. She was still fast asleep. I glanced down at the Lantian kindergarten admission letter in my hand. I couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. I felt a bit embarrassed. I'd been here for so long, and yet, in just a single day, my entire life had shifted. It had undergone a complete, earth-shattering transformation. Maybe I had been being far too cautious before. I looked at Lucia, her small body still wrapped in gauze. I opened the system shop, went to the biotech tab, and spent 500,000 points. I purchased a specialized oral medication to erase her scars, and another one designed to accelerate the healing of bone fractures. With these medicines, Lucia would be healthy again in no time. She needed to heal fast so she wouldn't be left with a limp. I had originally planned to wait a few more days before transferring Lucia to the new school, but I didn't expect Lin Sudong to show up right after I finished my lunch. She walked in carrying a mountain of nutritional supplements. "Hey, I'm on vacation for the next few days," she said. "I have nothing better to do, so I figured I'd come to the hospital. I'm here to see Lucia, at least she calls me Annie now." She gave a small laugh. Lin Sudong didn't dare mention the truth, that her boss had given her explicit leave and ordered her to protect Lucia at all costs, staying by her side. So, she just made up a convenient excuse. I could only manage an awkward smile in return. To be honest, this wasn't the first time I'd seen Lin Sudong. With all the trouble on Rongchong and Linley Street, I'd seen her responding to calls before. But the Lin Sudong standing here now wasn't just a high-ranking officer. In her civilian clothes, she looked completely different. She had less of that rigid authority and felt much more approachable. Still, the atmosphere between us felt a little bit awkward. After all, we were both single, and I was a man with a young daughter. And single? But Lucia was so excited, begging to call Lin Sudong mom. It was so embarrassing it made my skin crawl. I felt like I could dig a hole in the floor and hide forever. "Officer Lin, please stay with her for a bit. We're moving, so I have to go help Lucia with her school transfer." I had never tried anything like this in my life. In my previous life, I hadn't even held a girl's hand before I died. Now I had to be around a police officer as beautiful as Lin Sudong. I felt like I was sitting on a bed of needles. Fortunately, I found a way to make my escape. I slipped out of the room, but I couldn't truly escape the situation. Of course, Lucia was watching my every move. She looked at Lin Sudong with a grin and asked a question. "Mommy Sudong, what do you think of my daddy?" "Your dad?" Lin Sudong started acting a little strange. She was about to say something, but then she remembered what I had just mentioned. She quickly turned to Lucia and asked, "Did your dad say he's transferring you?" "Yes, Grandpa Zen found a new kindergarten near our new house, so he's going to the new school to check it out." Lucia nodded and asked, "Isn't this a bad thing?" Lin Sudong immediately called her boss to report the situation. The police had originally moved in nearby. Their whole mission was to protect us, a father and his daughter. If we moved now, wouldn't all that police effort be for nothing? When I arrived at the kindergarten, I met the head teacher, Ms. Liu. I explained why I was there, and Ms. Liu shared her thoughts. I had expected to see that old woman again before she disappeared, and the thought of it made me feel a bit uneasy, but I kept my cool. When I reached the principal's office, I saw the old principal was gone. He had been replaced by a middle-aged woman I had never seen before. "Hello," she said. "I am the new director of this kindergarten. Our school takes full responsibility for what happened to little Lucia. This is a small gesture from us, and I will handle the transfer papers immediately." As she spoke, the director slid a bank card across the desk toward me. There was a series of numbers written on the back. That had to be the PIN code for the account. Lucia's transfer process went through without a single hitch. Once I took the certificate, the director's smile vanished, and she turned serious. Ms. Liu followed her out and whispered, "Director, aren't we being a bit too careful?" "What do you know?" The new director snapped with a grave expression. "The previous director was arrested last night. Every single scandal they tried to bury in the past was dug up. Every teacher connected to her was fired on the spot. Why else do you think we were all transferred here so suddenly today?" Ms. Liu stood there, completely stunned by the revelation. She never imagined that a man like me had such powerful backing. "This man's background is simply terrifying," the director whispered. "Just look at what happened to Mao Uzi's family. His parents were arrested and their entire fortune was confiscated. The kid was sent to an orphanage, all in a single night." The new director watched me walk away and let out a long, tense breath. "Be careful from now on, or we'll both end up just like the last director." She gave one final stern instruction and hurried off to her office. A few days later, the Mecha was ready for its final transport. It was being moved to the Southern 611 Institute. This time, the transport wasn't handled by the local police force. A specialized team from the university took over the escort. The researchers from the institute personally oversaw the entire move. I had completed my mission and was finally ready to start a new life. Zheng Jikai's phone hasn't stopped ringing for a second. It's been like this for the past few days. She had just found out that I could manufacture high-end tech, specifically chips smaller than 5 nanometers. She chose to report it immediately, but the situation turned messy. It became a problem that was incredibly difficult to prove. She couldn't provide physical evidence that I was capable of it. Producing 5-nanometer chips sounded like a fairy tale to them. She knew I had been busy taking care of my daughter lately, so she didn't disturb me, planning to clear the path for me first. She's so enthusiastic because she knows the truth. If my technology is promoted, it will be a total collapse for the overseas chip industry. After all, even though China is currently lagging behind, the foreign markets aren't actually that much more advanced. They are still stuck in the same development cycle. In this era of power, whoever controls the chips controls everything. If domestic chips take the lead now, we win. One step ahead means staying ahead forever. Lately, she has been trying to convince everyone she can find. She's been pitching to state-owned companies and departments, planning our next move. She wants to convince them to fund a new company, a state-owned technology powerhouse. She's working with Liu Xiaoqiu on this, but they're dealing with useless bureaucrats who just occupy space. Chapter 19. What am I learning for? As soon as Zheng Jikai walked into the house, she went silent. She heard her grandfather scolding people and couldn't help but ask about it. "Grandpa, why are you in such a bad mood again? Lately my throat is practically on fire from talking so much. These idiots don't understand the political importance of this at all, much less the strategic significance of my work. Those 5-nanometer chips are the key, but they're letting the West take the lead. If those foreigners take the first step and dominate the tech economy, then in the future, we'll be nothing but strangers in our own market." Zheng Jikai looked at him. She spoke with a pained expression, realizing the gravity of the situation. "So those state companies and departments we contacted, they all said no. They're only interested in avoiding mistakes and playing it safe. The people running those departments aren't experts. They're just there for the title. They only care about their credentials and have zero sense of national honor. They lack any real vision for development." Zheng Jikai sighed, looking at the man who had given everything for the future. He had entered the university the moment he graduated. He climbed from a simple researcher to the director of the Southern Institute. He dedicated his entire life to that institution. I looked at him and said, "Grandpa, actually, I think it's a good thing we aren't cooperating with them." Zheng Jikai paused and let out a sharp, "HM. Tell me more," he challenged. Zheng Jikai wasn't some stubborn, old-fashioned patriarch. He actually valued the opinions of the younger generation. I told him, "Think about it. If this becomes a state-owned holding company, will Liu Gang have the final say, or will the bureaucrats at the top? With their strict budgets, he'll definitely run out of money. They'll assign him tasks, and he won't be able to design whatever he wants anymore." I kept analyzing the situation as he listened intently. Zheng Jikai nodded, processing my words. I continued, "What if we change the dynamic? What if we establish a different kind of relationship? A cooperation, like the 4th-generation fighter jet we're planning to build. He has already handed over the blueprints. If we reach a flexible cooperation agreement, we can support him and let him assist with production. He could supply all the relevant materials. We could even let his factory handle the construction of a new facility. He could be the one in charge of the final assembly. Wouldn't that protect him while letting him make a fortune? My words were a revelation for the old man. Zhang Jikai looked at me and said, "You're right, I was a bit obsessed with just protecting the safety of that father and daughter. If we involve the military zone, well," he chuckled. "I have an even better idea," Zhang Jikai declared. He had thought of a new approach, but there was a catch. He needed to discuss it with Lu Xiaoqiu first. Then, he asked me how the analysis was going. "How is the work on the mecha coming along?" I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over my face. About that, I was just about to tell you everything." His interruption had almost made me forget the most important part. "You're the one who gave me this life." I decided to go see what happened for myself right then. After hearing his granddaughter's words, Zhang Jikai also wanted to know the truth. We arrived at the Research Institute's workshop together. To facilitate the study, the University of Mexico's Science Institute had constructed a specialized facility for human-centered research. They built a clean hangar specifically to house this mecha. Now, almost every researcher from the entire institute was gathered there. They were all crowded around, trying to piece the story together. They circled the mecha like it was the center of Mexico City itself. "Is it done? Do we have any results yet?" Zhang Jikai directed his question toward the future-focused Yuan Lan. Yuan Lan looked completely helpless. He had a miserable expression on his face. After hearing the report, Yuan Lan and the others finally understood. They realized they couldn't even get past the first step. They were unable to finalize the mecha's operating system. Failing that, they tried to start by analyzing the materials. They were desperately examining the armor plating and its outer coating. Thanks for watching the video. They were hoping to scavenge some kind of breakthrough technology, something new they could use for the heart-lung machine. But the reality was the exact opposite of what they wanted. They could take the mecha apart and put it back together, but they couldn't analyze the armor. They couldn't even damage it. They used a 5,000-degree laser and couldn't cut a single piece. The plating was so tough they couldn't even leave a scratch on it. The armor's coating was even more ridiculous. It could absorb light perfectly. It completely swallowed every radio wave they threw at it. That meant a mecha this massive would show up on radar, as if it didn't even exist. As for how the joints remained flexible, that was even more incomprehensible to these researchers. Then there was the room temperature. Superconducting material. The photoelectric transmission under that level of superconductivity at room temperature made these experts feel like amateurs. It was as if they had been sent back to their first day of college. They didn't know this. They didn't know that. They knew nothing. Zhang Jikai wasn't surprised at all. I had already expected this much. Since I used a quantum processor, Zhang Jikai knew the tech inside. This mecha was at least several decades ahead of the current era. How can someone who just learned to walk suddenly build a fighter jet? Yuan Lan was even more direct and completely broke down. There was simply nothing for them to learn. It was too advanced. Zhang Jikai had no choice but to contact me and ask me to come to the base whenever I had the time. After moving into the Air Base residential complex with Yaya, I felt like the world had slowed down. The massive mountain of pressure that had been weighing on my head suddenly vanished. Everyone living in this complex is a military relative. These are people who have dedicated their lives to serving the country. They are disciplined and have a strong sense of duty. The quality of life here is excellent. In the few days since I moved in, I haven't heard a single person arguing during the day. Everything around me is peaceful, even at midnight. After this period of much-needed rest, between the medication and the care, Yaya recovered remarkably well. Not only were there no scars, but even the doctor was stunned. He couldn't believe how fast my daughter was healing. I knew her bone fracture wasn't that simple, and it certainly wasn't just luck. If I hadn't secretly given Yaya those specialized meds, it would have taken months for her to walk again. I brought Yaya to our new home, but Zhang Jikai's call was still on my mind, asking me to drop by the base whenever I could. I realized it was finally the weekend, and after thinking it over, I decided to bother Lin Xingxuang one more time. During this whole ordeal, Lin Xingxuang had been running to the hospital every single day. She visited Yaya so often that she finally got used to having me around. She didn't feel the need to run away the moment she saw me anymore. We even exchanged contact info, which seemed to make her pretty happy. But when Lin Xingxuang pulled out her mobile phone, I was the one who ended up surprised. Getting a decent phone isn't exactly easy these days, and her device looked like an eighth-hand piece of junk found in the trash. Someone must have sold it to her for cheap. Holding that phone in her hands, Lin Xingxuang didn't look like someone from this modern era at all. She just looked like an ordinary, hard-working police officer. I called her up and asked if she was free today, since Yaya and I had finished moving in. It turned out the relocation plan for the Rongchang Street police station had temporarily suspended her usual duties. Her only recent assignment was to keep a close eye on Yaya and wait for orders from her superiors, so she was available. After taking my call, Lin Xingxuang asked for the address and said coming over was no problem. But the moment I gave her the location, something strange happened. There was a sudden knock at my front door. I stood there stunned, the phone still pressed to my ear. The sound of the knocking echoed through the receiver and down the hallway at the exact same time. When I pulled the door open, Lin Xingxuang was already standing there. She was smiling at me, dressed in simple, casual clothes. The door across the hall wasn't even closed yet. What a coincidence, Lin Xingxuang said, waving her hands. The corners of her mouth twitched, not quite knowing what expression to make as our story took another turn. After all the twists and turns, we were back where we started. I never expected Lin Qingxuang to live right next door to me. You live here too? I asked, completely caught off guard. I had so many plans for the future. I had planned to do everything right this time, but the moment I saw her standing there, I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over me. As a father, I felt irresponsible constantly leaving my daughter in someone else's care. But Yaya spoke up sensibly. It's okay, Dad, go to work. I'll have a Kinswan come with me, and then I'll ask Yaya if she wants to come over and play. Yaya, do you want to come play at Mommy Qingxuang's house? By now, Lin Qingxuang was completely immune to being called Mommy. In fact, she actually seemed to enjoy it. Yaya didn't hesitate for a second and ran straight to her. She hugged Lin Qingxuang's leg tight and stared up at me with those small, bright eyes. Dad, why are you still just standing there looking at me? Aren't you leaving? I want to go play with Mommy Qingxuang, Yaya said, her tone making it clear she wanted me gone. I felt a pang of disappointment. Yaya had her mommy now and didn't need Dad. Dad is a boy, and boys should go out and fight for their dreams. Staying with Yaya all the time will just get in the way of your success, Yaya finished, her cheeks puffed out as she giggled. Yaya, who told you something like that? Lin Qingxuang asked. She couldn't help but burst out laughing at the little girl's logic. My old grandma back home said a man who stays in the house has no ambition. Fine, Dad is going out to fight then, but you have to listen to Mommy Qingxuang, okay? I looked at my daughter, feeling completely helpless against her charms. Then, I turned my gaze toward Lin Qingxuang. Thank you, Officer Lin. It's no trouble, I really adore Yaya. As she spoke, Lin Qingxuang reached down and gently pinched Yaya's cheek, making the little girl erupt into a fit of giggles. After I walked away, Lin Qingxuang knelt down to Yaya's level. Yaya, what you said just now wasn't exactly right. Your dad doesn't stay home because he lacks ambition. He stays home because he wants to take care of you. Your dad stays home because he loves you. It's not because he lacks ambition, but because you're his whole world. So, Dad has no way to go out? Yaya asked, her voice dropping with sadness. She looked a bit depressed hearing that, but Qingxuang just shook her head. No, your dad is an adult. If he wanted to leave, nobody could stop him. The only reason he stays home with you every single day is because he loves you more than anything. Lin Qingxuang smiled warmly and patted Yaya on the head. Yaya nodded slowly, as if she finally understood the weight of my sacrifice. Meanwhile, I took the bus all the way across the city. My destination was the Nan Institute, located right in the heart of the district. The Nan family's residence is massive, sitting right near the Air Force Base on Rongchang Street. The institute itself is tucked away in the Balan district of Jinshan. It wasn't actually that far of a trip, and I arrived in the city center quickly. As I approached the gates of the Nan Institute, I saw Zen and Kai. They were already standing there, waiting for my arrival at the entrance. Xiao Lu, hurry up, come inside, and take a seat. They wasted no time, and led me straight toward the main office. Tai quickly pulled out a chair and invited me to sit down. Zheng Jiaji poured me a glass of water and took a seat right there on the floor. Zen and Kai sat on the sofa nearby and got straight to the point. Xiao Lu, you're giving us a massive headache here at the Nan Institute. I already had a pretty good idea of what they meant. I smiled and asked, is the problem that you can't wrap your heads around the mecha? Zen pointed at me, realizing I had anticipated this exact situation. He burst out laughing at my bluntness. Not exactly, I replied. I just wanted to see something. I wanted to know just how much of that technology you guys could actually grasp. I felt a small twinge of guilt looking at them. I had handed over the manufacturing equipment, the blueprints, and the core tech. To me, it was basically a beginner's gift pack for them to play with. Aside from the frame and the transmission tech I personally mastered, the rest of the assembly felt like playing with simple building blocks. But the technological level of that mecha is simply too high for them. It completely surpasses this current era. The truth is, we don't even know where to start, Zen admitted sincerely. We are completely lost right now. It's like ancient people staring at a piece of high-end modern technology. We can see it, but we can't understand the principles behind it. I nodded, realizing my suspicions about their progress were correct. I looked at Zen and Kai, then spoke up. Even if a deal fails, shouldn't there still be some professional courtesy? Besides, I gave you the blueprints for those $200 million. That should be more than enough value for your money. Zen looked at me, visibly taken aback by my casual tone. $200 million is just the standard price for a modern fighter jet. But the value of a complete set of these blueprints is on a different level. It's worth far more than that price tag suggests. I figured we're all just contributing to the country's progress anyway. A little more or a little less money doesn't really matter to me. I told them this with a calm, steady smile. Of course, I wasn't actually planning on running a charity. I don't do business deals that end in a loss. Zen is currently the highest-ranking official I can get in touch with, and I've already spent the last few days mapping out my next move. I've decided on the future development direction for my company. If Zen can help me out, my path forward becomes twice as easy. A favor like that is a godsend for my plans. It's the kind of leverage you simply can't measure with money. But Zen didn't need to know any of that yet. Meaning, right this second, Zen finally decided to share his proposal with me. Lu, you mentioned something earlier, he began. Are you planning on starting your own company? I have a few ideas for you. Do you want to hear them? Go ahead, I replied. Give me the details. I knew right then that I had played my cards perfectly. I want you to collaborate with the Southwest Military Region and our research institute. You would become the official supplier for our entire facility. The military will back you, guaranteeing your sales and your personal safety. In exchange, the military will have priority on everything your company produces. How does that sound? He asked. I responded with a calm smile, but my mind was racing. I thought hitching my wagon to the Nansawa Institute was the peak, but having the full weight of the military region behind me, that was a massive, unexpected power move. I'd like to see anyone try to act tough with me now. Still, military hardware is a different beast than commercial tech. My current business plans were going to need some major adjustments. I looked at Zen and told him I was in. He pulled out 3 identical copies of the document immediately. He handed the contracts over to me right then and there. The moment I signed, I officially became a partner of the Nansawa Institute. I was now their primary supplier, backed by the weight of the state. As for the damaged tech, it wasn't really a loss at all. I had used components that no other researcher could even begin to understand. Everything was sent back to my recycling center for processing. Nansawa would handle the logistics, but the tech stayed mine. With the Institute and the Southwest Military Region behind me, everything changed. My scrap yard in the city was no longer just a pile of junk. The old business was officially dead and buried. Instead of just sending the mecha back for repairs, they sent a team to secure the entire warehouse where I kept it. They renovated the whole place into a high-tech, sterile hangar. The military even started rezoning all the land surrounding my property. They were clearing out the entire area to create a massive security perimeter. The plan was to seize the land and lease it back to me for my operations. I was getting a world-class factory built right on my doorstep. But word got out that the local housing was being demolished again. The neighbors weren't exactly thrilled about being kicked out twice. They were ecstatic, knowing their property was now valued at over $1 million. I stood there, looking at the mecha. It sat perfectly still in the middle of my brand new, sterile hangar. I couldn't help but find the whole situation a little bit funny. After all the chaos and back and forth, the machine was finally back in my hands where it belonged. And now, I had the perfect opportunity to keep improving it. I was going to turn this thing into a true weapon of war. I was deep in thought, focused on the next set of upgrades, mapping out exactly how I wanted to modify this Gundam. Suddenly, my phone rang. Chapter 21, The Classic Skin. Lou, how long has it been since we last saw each other? What have you been keeping yourself so busy with lately? I never really had the habit of saving phone numbers. When you go door to door collecting scrap, too many people get your digits. If I saved every single one, my SIM card would have run out of space years ago. I stayed silent for a moment, trying to place the voice. I searched through my memories until the face finally clicked. I finally remembered exactly who was on the other end of the line. Why the sudden call? Didn't we just talk recently? I'm apparently on a business trip to Hinching right now. I was thinking that there must still be a lot of our old classmates around. I'm in Hinching, so I called to see if we could get a few people together. The caller's name was Han, my old bunkmate from my university days. We had a solid relationship back when we were students. We even attended Suzhou University in Hinching together. That was actually one of the reasons I chose to settle in Hinching after getting married. After all, so many of my former classmates had stayed in this city. I figured if I ever ran into real trouble, it would be good to have someone nearby who could lend a hand. I chuckled and asked him directly, "You still can't forget about her, can you?" No, that's not true at all. Why are you slandering me like this? This came out of nowhere. Han denied it immediately over the phone, but his usual stuttering gave him away instantly. So, when is this happening? Can we bring our families along? I asked him straight up if I should bring my family tomorrow night. Han hesitated for a moment before speaking. Apparently, everyone in our social circle already knew about my divorce. My ex-wife was also from our university, even if she had a different major, so people talked. I'm talking about my daughter. I don't feel comfortable leaving her home alone. I knew Han was just trying to be a good friend. He was clearly worried about my emotional state. I kept my tone light and generous to put him at ease. That's good. I was afraid you hadn't moved on yet. Han laughed twice, sounding relieved, then lowered his voice. He asked cautiously, "Hey, remember to dress down tomorrow, okay?" "Why?" I asked him with a smirk. I could practically see him smiling through the phone. "Because if you show up looking too handsome, the girls won't even look at me. Give your old roommate a chance, man. Don't outshine your own brother." Han sounded bitter, remembering our 4 years at university together. Whenever we went out, I was always the one who caught everyone's eye. The other 3 always looked like my sidekicks or hired muscle. Fine, I laughed. I'll just wear my usual everyday clothes. Just like my style back in university, alright? I agreed to the plan with a smile, thanking him for the heads up. If I managed to win over my daughter and my old friends tomorrow, it would be a success. "You better show up, or I'm not starting the party," Han warned. He let out a loud laugh, and then hung up the phone. He was clearly getting hyped for our class reunion tomorrow. Suddenly, Yaya turned into a little octopus and pounced on my back. Her tiny arms and legs wrapped tightly around me as she clung on. She looked at me with pure excitement in her eyes. "Daddy, are we going out to eat meat tomorrow?" Uncle Han said he's inviting Yaya and Daddy to eat meat together. Yaya wants to go. I tilted my head back and kissed her cheek with a smile. "Alright, tomorrow we'll go and eat all the meat you want." Yaya clapped her hands, looking absolutely thrilled. A moment later, I packed my gear back into my work bag. I took Yaya's hand and started heading back home. But when we reached the building, Yaya didn't want me to carry her up. She insisted on climbing the stairs all by herself. She ran straight to Lin Qingxuang's door and knocked as hard as she could. "I'm back," she shouted at the top of her lungs. Lin Qingxuang opened the door and immediately saw Yaya standing there. The little girl was grinning from ear to ear. I'm back," Yaya chirped as she rushed inside. At this point, it wasn't just Lin Qingxuang waiting for her, but also Lin Beimin's wife, Oya. Lin Qingxuang's mother had completely taken over the role of being Yaya's surrogate grandmother. The moment they saw Yaya, they both beamed and hurried her into the house. "Yaya needs to sleep early tonight," I told them, stepping forward. "I wanted to let you know that Yaya and I are going out for meat tomorrow, so you don't have to wait for her for dinner." By now, Yaya and Lin Qingxuang were practically like mother and daughter. It had become a routine. The first thing Yaya did after school was report to her. If Lin Qingxuang didn't see Yaya on time, my phone would start ringing immediately. At first, Lin Qingxuang only looked after Yaya because of the mission, but after living together for so long, things had changed. She genuinely loved how sensible and lively the little girl was. "You're going out tomorrow?" Lin Qingxuang asked, looking at me. I nodded and explained, "Yeah, it's a university class reunion." I didn't say it out loud, because that would have been too embarrassing. I was just going out to have a few drinks. I figured she was probably tired of babysitting all the time anyway. I quickly waved my hand, knowing Lin Qingxuang had been glued to Yaya's side lately. National security agents were already handling my protection, so she didn't need to worry about me. But since she had the best bond with Yaya, the agency had officially reassigned her. While Yaya was in class during the day, Lin Qingxuang was undergoing professional training to handle any sudden threats. She realized that if I was going out, national security would already be watching from the shadows. She didn't need to stress over Yaya's safety for one night. But suddenly, Yaya ran over and threw her arms around Lin Qingxuang's leg. She looked up with those big, pitiful eyes and spoke. "Mommy Qingxuang, can't you come with us?" Lin Qingxuang's eyes widened in shock. She pointed at herself, looking completely surprised. "Me? Go together? I don't think that's a good idea." Yaya just looked at her with a bright, persistent smile. She kept insisting, "It's okay, it'll be fine." Lin Qingxuang thought about it and finally nodded. "All right, I'll go to the reunion with you." After her daughter closed the door, Mrs. Zhao looked at her. She smirked and asked, "So, what's the deal?" "I'm telling you, Qingxuang. You're so obsessed with that man's daughter. Aren't you afraid people will get the wrong idea?" Mrs. Zhao chuckled as she stared at her own daughter. Lin Qingxuang just rolled her eyes and muttered, "I'm doing it for the mission." She was always focused on her career, even with the new year approaching. "Since Lu Gang and his wife aren't coming home for the holidays, invite them to our house." Mrs. Zhao was too lazy to keep arguing with her daughter. She just tied on her apron and headed to the kitchen to cook. Lin Qingxuang gave a quick reply and went to get her car. By the next afternoon, everything was ready for the reunion. "Wow, Mommy Qingxuang," Yaya shouted. "Is this car yours?" I honestly didn't expect Lin Qingxuang to be driving an old Jetta. I had been busy at the scrapyard, sorting through the inventory, selling what I could and keeping the rest, since money was tight lately. It's your grandfather's. I just borrowed it," Lin Qingxuang explained. She made a face, probably thinking about her father's pained expression when she took it. As Yaya hopped in, her eyes suddenly lit up when she saw what we were wearing. She was rocking that youthful, campus-style look. It was the classic outfit from our university days. I hadn't changed my style once in 4 years of college. My old classmates would probably recognize me in a heartbeat. Lin Qingxuang was wearing a white shirt and a knitted vest with a pleated skirt. We had both chosen the exact same colors, looking like a matching couple. Yaya looked at us like she'd caught us red-handed. Chapter 22. Good boy, you're eating better and better every day, I thought. Lin Qingxuang's expression shifted as she realized the coincidence. Neither of us had intended to wear matching outfits, but it was far too late to go back and change now. We just have to head to dinner looking like this. When we arrived at her mother's house and stepped out of the car, a tall, imposing figure was already waiting for us. He rushed over immediately and pulled me into a massive bear hug. I could barely breathe. "Old Lu, man, I've missed you so much. Come here, give me a big kiss." I pushed him off and snapped, "Get lost, my daughter is right here." She was watching the whole ridiculous scene unfold. I shoved him away with a look of pure disgust. I tried to shake off the awkwardness and regain my composure. I pulled Yaya forward to introduce her. "Yaya, this is Uncle Ihan, my best friend from my college dorm. Say hello to Uncle Ihan," I told her. "Hello, Uncle Ihan," Yaya chirped sweetly. Ihan let out a long, dramatic gasp of joy. He immediately scooped Yaya up into a big hug. He couldn't stop grinning from ear to ear. "Look at this girl. How can one child be so incredibly adorable? Why don't you become my goddaughter right now? Your godfather is loaded this year, and I've got plenty of red envelopes to give out. Let's get an early start on the New Year gifts," he said while fumbling through his pockets. Ihan started digging around frantically for cash. He pulled out 200 yuan bills and shoved them directly into my hand. "This is for my niece. Buy her some candy, and don't you dare embezzle it." I looked at the money and then back at my old friend. I knew Ihan wasn't just being polite. He genuinely meant it. So I didn't argue and tucked the bills into my pocket for Yaya. Just as Ihan was about to lead us both inside the house, my eyes swept over the crowd gathered near the hotel entrance. Then I noticed Lin Qingxuan standing there with a look of pure shock. She looked back and forth between us and asked, Lu Gang, aren't you going to introduce me? I realized I'd been so distracted by Yihan that I'd completely forgotten her. I quickly gestured for Lin Qingxuan to come over and introduce herself to him. Yihan, this is Officer Lin Qingxuan, my neighbor from across the hall. She's been incredibly busy lately doing great things for the force. She's also been helping me look after Yaya, so I brought her along to grab a free meal. And Lin, this is my brother from my dorm days, Yihan. Lin Qingxuan gave a polite nod and said, hello, nice to meet you. Yihan blinked and replied, hi, sorry, I didn't even notice you standing there. My apologies, please, come inside. Yihan started leading us toward his mother's house while still carrying Yaya. As we walked, he leaned in, gritted his teeth, and whispered, you sly dog. Your taste in women is getting better and better, isn't it? That girl is a solid 9 out of 10. How do you have such insane luck? I shot him a look and hissed back, don't talk nonsense, we're just neighbors. Oh, sure, just neighbors, Yihan repeated. His voice was dripping with heavy sarcasm. Then he looked at Yaya with a dead serious expression. Yaya, what do you think? Are your dad and this beautiful lady really just neighbors? Uncle, if you're talking about Mama Qingxuan, right now, she's just Daddy's neighbor. But I'm really hoping that Mama Qingxuan can be the first one. I want her to be my real mama, Yaya said with total sincerity. Yaya, don't say such things. Lin Qingxuan's face turned bright red as she shot Yaya a reproachful look. Yaya just stuck out her tongue and covered her mouth with her hands. She watched the two of them interact with a mischievous glint in her eyes. The fake smile on Yihan's face became even harder to maintain. He walked over to my side, speaking through a forced grin. He barely moved his lips as he hissed through gritted teeth. You are one incredibly annoying brat. If I'd known, I never would have invited you. Fine, just sit down already. I looked away awkwardly and pretended I hadn't heard a word. I hurried to pull out a chair for Lin Qingxuan to sit. Waiter, bring over some extra menus and a few more sets of silverware. A lot of people are coming in a bit, Yihan shouted. A few people had already taken their seats by then. My memory of these people was a bit fuzzy, but I still vaguely remembered them. They really were my old college classmates. Old Lu, come on, sit here, one of them called out. The classmates I used to be close with invited me to sit down. Seeing how Yihan could afford to host so many people in a private hotel room, it was clear the guy had done pretty well for himself over the last few years. Old Lu, who is this? Aren't you going to introduce her? They all looked at me with playful, curious eyes, noticing Lin Qingxuan. I gave them the same explanation I gave before, but without exception, not a single one of them believed me. I didn't even bother trying to explain further at that point. I figured I'd just let them say whatever they wanted. Lin Qingxuan didn't say a word about the situation either. She just focused on taking care of Yaya and ignored everyone else. The rest of the guests arrived one after another. Yihan glanced at the reserved seats and noticed two were still empty. He leaned in and whispered into my ear. Old Lu, brother, I should probably apologize to you first. Yihan knows a lot of things, and when he speaks like that, it usually isn't about something small. Didn't you get divorced? I thought you were still young and single. So I contacted someone from our class, and they're coming. This reunion was meant to give you a chance, but now, I just hope you two don't fight. Beside me, Lin Qingxuan awkwardly picked up her teacup and took a sip. The name he mentioned felt distant. So distant I could barely even remember it. I only had a vague memory of what she even looked like back then. But I did remember that our relationship used to be pretty good. Sorry I'm late, a voice called out just as everyone was about to start eating, assuming she wasn't going to show up. A woman walked in wearing a sharp, professional suit. She looked at everyone with an apologetic expression and said she was sorry. The traffic was a nightmare, so I'll punish myself with 3 drinks, she said. She reached for the wine bottle, planning to fill her own glass. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of me. She froze for a moment and whispered, Lu Gang, it's been a long time. Her face was still flushed from the heat of her commute. It was hard to tell if she was blushing from running late or from seeing me. It really has been a long time, Lu Gang. I looked at the person standing in front of me as memories flooded back. The images that were once blurry in my mind were gradually becoming crystal clear, but I felt a twinge of embarrassment. Back then, I always wondered if I had just treated her like a sister. We had even made a pact to take the entrance exams together, to continue our studies as a pair. But instead, I completely abandoned that path halfway through to get married. Lin Qingxuan watched the heavy atmosphere between us and started overthinking. She probably expected a cold war to break out between her and this newcomer. But she didn't expect Yi Yushi to be such a formidable rival. And there I was, sitting in the prime spot while everyone watched the drama unfold. My daughter Yaya was happily snacking, oblivious to the tension. As for my other classmates, they were acting like scavengers hunting for gossip. Their eyes kept darting back and forth between Lin Qingxuan and Yi Yushi. Yi Yushi used to be the most famous beauty in the engineering department. Back in those days, she was the brightest star in the entire faculty. Everyone was certain that she and I would end up together. Nobody expected me to switch paths and go home to marry someone else. When Yi Yushi saw Lin Qingxuan and Yaya sitting by my side, her expression shifted into something very interesting. The light in her eyes dimmed, and I didn't even know how to explain myself. Lin Qingxuan, despite being right in the middle of it, had zero confidence. She looked like she wanted to pretend none of this had anything to do with her. Meanwhile, our classmates were practically vibrating with excitement watching us. They were getting restless, bored of the silence, and hungry for a scene. I knew what they were thinking. I want to see blood on the floor. To them, a class reunion is only good if a couple gets torn apart. They were itching to say something, but nobody dared to speak first. Right then, the door swung open and someone else walked in. The king had arrived, or at least, that's what he thought. "Sorry everyone, the traffic was a nightmare," he announced. "I'm late, so this round is on me. Don't even try to argue." He clasped his hands together and flashed a wide, practiced smile. He was apologizing to the room, but his face didn't show a hint of regret. He had the unmistakable air of a nouveau riche show-off. "I figured this blowhard wouldn't miss the chance to brag," my friend whispered. I looked up and recognized the man standing in the doorway immediately. It was our official class president from back in college, Zhang Yuan. Do you understand the concept of adult decency? Back in college, Zhang Yuan couldn't stand me because I was always one step ahead. As the class heartthrob, I had the grades and the looks to match. The few girls in our department were always hovering around me. It didn't help that Zhang Yuan clearly had his eyes on Yi Yushi too. Back in our student days, he spent half his time trying to make my life difficult. I usually took the high road and avoided him whenever I could. But when I couldn't avoid him, I let my results do the talking, like the 4-year scholarship streak I held. My grades were my ultimate trump card in that school, even when I had a major blowout with the class president. As long as no one ended up in the hospital, the counselor and the department head would just look the other way. Zhang Yuan was the eternal runner-up, always stuck in second place. He only managed to snag the recommendation for graduate school, because I decided to head home and get married instead. He just finished his graduate degree recently, and he's clearly feeling himself right now. "I know that guy," a small voice whispered near the door. Suddenly, Yaya's voice cut right through the polite chatter of the room. She pointed a finger directly at Zhang Yuan and didn't hold back. "When I was with mommy and daddy earlier, he was the one who blocked us when we were trying to park. I saw him just sitting there in his car. I reacted immediately. I reached out and gently covered my daughter's mouth. The world is a small place, my dear daughter." The moment I saw Zhang Yuan, I knew exactly what he was doing. This guy was nothing like me. He was definitely being late on purpose. Because if you're actually in a rush and want to be on time, you should be sprinting through the door. That's the basic respect you show to the people waiting for you. But Zhang Yuan didn't care about setting a good example. He didn't even bother to look up at the room. He just breathed calmly, taking his time, walking in with a smug attitude. It was obvious. He arrived late just to show off and make sure all eyes were on him. Zhang Yuan had played this exact game many times back in school. I had thought so much about it, about the concept of adult decency. And yet, his entire charade was just exposed by a child. Suddenly, the scene became so awkward that Zhang Yuan looked like he wanted to vanish. He was practically curling his toes in embarrassment inside his shoes. The classmates sitting nearby were doing everything they could to stifle their laughter. Even the guy next to him had a smirk he couldn't quite hide. I looked down at my daughter, YY, sitting right beside me. She had just exposed Zhang Yuan's lies, and I realized just how much I loved her spirit. I actually got here early," Zhang Yuan stammered, "but I was busy all night. I've been working nonstop, taking one business call after another. I literally just finished the job and ran inside." "You guys understand how it is, right?" he asked with a forced smile. The classmates around him nodded repeatedly to be polite, but their eyes were filled with nothing but mockery. Zhang Yuan had suffered a humiliating public defeat, and in that moment, he directed all that burning hatred toward me. All his old grudges and this new resentment boiled over at once. He glared at me with pure hostility and said, "Lu Gang, this is an alumni reunion. Why did you bring a woman and a kid? Did you forget we're supposed to go out after?" I ignored his tone, focused on my daughter, and said, "YY has school tomorrow. She can't stay out late, and as for Lin, she's just my neighbor. I've been swamped with work lately, and she's been helping me look after YY, so I brought her along for the meal. After all, it would be a waste not to take advantage of the free food." I openly admitted that I was only here to enjoy a free dinner on someone else's dime. Sometimes, brutal honesty is the best defense. It's the ultimate weapon. I didn't try to defend my pride or make excuses. I just told the truth without starting an argument. I didn't feel the need to justify my presence to anyone. I just stated the facts as they were. If nothing is going on, there's nothing to hide. There was absolutely no shame in my voice. Zhang Yuan had attacked Lin Qingshuang earlier just to make our classmates think poorly of us. He wanted everyone to see us as cheap freeloaders, ruining my reputation. He was desperate to poison their impression of me. But once he got a clear look at the reality of the situation, and saw how stunning Lin Qingshuang actually was, his face twisted with jealousy. He couldn't understand why I was always surrounded by beauty. My ex-wife had been a famous school beauty herself, which is how she found a new man so quickly. But Lin Qingshuang was on an entirely different level than my ex. She had a better figure, a better life, and a grace that my ex-wife could never match. It wasn't just about her looks, either. Her personality was much more vibrant and youthful. She was a breath of fresh air compared to my ex-wife, a true upgrade in every sense. Zhang Yuan watched us, his teeth clenched in pure envy, while Han lingered nearby. I caught every single one of Zhang Yuan's petty little expressions. After all these years, Han had still chosen to side with Zhang Yuan. He was backing the wrong horse, as usual. I finally understood that Lin Qingshuang was my greatest source of pride here. But Zhang Yuan was here to cause trouble, and he wasn't going to give up that easily. He quickly pivoted to find a new angle for his attack. So, speaking of work, where is everyone employed these days? He asked loudly. You know, after graduation, my father insisted I join the family business. I'm an executive now, and my annual salary is, well, it's this much. As he spoke, Zhang Yuan held up a single finger. He waved it in front of everyone's faces, soaking in their immediate flattery. Being an executive in your own daddy's company? Please, what's so magical about that? I could go out and start my own country right now. I could proclaim myself emperor if I wanted to. Han curled his lip in bitter silence. Zhang Yuan seemed to sense the shift in the room's energy. He suddenly turned his gaze toward me and asked with a sharp, mocking eye. He flashed a smug grin and said, Xiaoqiu, you mentioned earlier that you've been busy with work lately. What exactly are you doing? Right now, I used to run a scrapyard, but I'm planning to leave that behind. I'm moving on to something different, I said, and Zhang Yuan let out a long, mocking oh. A scrapyard? I never would have guessed it, Lu Xiaoqiu. The top student of our year has fallen so far that he's collecting junk for a living. I have to wonder, how much money can a garbage man even make in a month? Zhang Yuan's words triggered a wave of heavy sighs across the room. In this day and age, people look down on manual laborers and trash collectors. Even if they make a decent living, they can never truly hold their heads high. I saw the expressions on Yi Han and Yi Yushi's faces shift as Zhang Yuan kept digging. A few classmates who were still on my side already knew the truth about my situation. They knew I had lost everything when my family's business went bankrupt. I hadn't started out collecting scrap metal, but that was my reality now. Between the defaulted loans and my shattered credit, my options were non-existent. Without a clean record or a fresh degree, I couldn't find a better job if I tried. Zhang Yuan bringing this up wasn't just small talk. It was salt in an open wound. He was deliberately poking at my scars, but Lin Qingshuang just watched him calmly. She had been busy taking care of Yaya, but she was listening to every single word. She could tell this greasy guy in front of us was trying to humiliate me. I knew exactly what Zhang Yuan was doing. He wanted to see me squirm. He was waiting to see how I would handle being cornered in front of everyone. But to his surprise, I just smiled and let out a calm breath. I looked him in the eye and spoke with total sincerity. It doesn't make much. It certainly doesn't compare to our class president's massive house or his thriving business. But I believe that, one way or another, everything in life is earned. There's no shame in scrap metal. I don't steal, and I don't beg. Every cent is clean. It's an honest living, and that's enough for me. Beside me, Yi Yusin's expression softened into something like pity. She looked at my rough hands, covered in thick calluses from months of heavy labor. I could tell it pained her to see me like this after everything I'd been through. She took a deep breath, clearly trying to find the courage to speak up for me. Finally, she whispered, Xiaoqiu, would you like to come and try working at our factory? Chapter 21-24, Annihilation Mode. A factory job? Yi Yusin had never mentioned her family owning a factory before, and from the look on Zhang Yuan's face, he was just as shocked as I was.